pull every single vote, and it's gone to a place where British Columbia has always been, which is two parties. And, of course, the Greens are fighting it out as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing more results come. I know it's still early, but they are coming faster than we're used to in elections.
Yes, at lightning speed, it feels like. Thank you so much.
Yes, refresh everybody.
Of course, Housing Minister under David Eby's NDP, also hoping for re-election tonight in Delta North. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Well, he does have a very
I don't know what
sizable
keeps
lead.
happening. I've turned off the game.
At the moment, so you can tell him his tiredness is.
He's
So maybe that'll fix things.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
All right, well, we're at this dead heat right now, as you can see on the screen. NDP leading or elected in 45 ridings. The Conservatives, okay, we're just going to refresh it. Let's have a look now. All right, that was pretty much the same. NDP leading in 44, elected in 1.
They each got
Conservatives
1.
leading in 44, elected in 1. That was Nechako Lakes.
Oh my God, it is 45, 45, 2 green. Holy shnikey.
This is going to go back and forth all night. Richard just showed it essentially tied there.
Why'd you put that evil into the world?
Always a very
Shaft.
close vote there. The NDP winning in the new riding of Kelowna Centre so far. Very
Yeah, no, it's
slim
me.
lead. Surrey Fleetwood, which had been a strong
Tom's
NDP riding. And now you've got the NDP
Tricky
with a
Tom's
slight
trying to
lead
shut us
in
down
Saanich
for
North and
truth.
Mountains, which the Green Party had.
We've talked a lot about battleground Surrey and some very tight races that I'm sure we'll see tonight. Richard Zussman has more on what's going on in Surrey right now.
Yeah, so the bottom line numbers may not be changing, but we're getting more and more votes into the system. And I do want to focus in on Surrey because this looks very different than how we've seen in the past. I want to show you that. So this is 2020. You can see that, the big orange blob right in the middle of Surrey. Well, 2024, again, it's very early, is shaping up a little differently. And let's focus in on some of these ridings that would be gains. Surrey North, Rashna Singh is the incumbent, but this, just a 109 vote lead with 4 out of 18 polls reporting there. Then we move over here. The riding of Surrey Fleetwood would be a pickup. This is one the NDP won in 2013, but again, it is so close, just 19 votes. So maybe all those hours that Ravi Kahlon put it in the door in the pouring rain may pay off, or they may not, because it seems like this is going to be a vote where every single vote matters here. It's going to be that close. 5 out of 19 reporting there. Up here in the riding of Surrey Guildford, again, one of those 2013 pickups for the NDP. Hanvir Radwana is leading for the Conservatives, 229 votes over Gary Begg, the incumbent. This is one that's 5 of 19 polls are reporting there. And as we work our way through Surrey, these were the battlegrounds that we had focused so much time and energy on. Surrey Serpentine River, the leaders went there again and again and again. Linda Hepner, the former mayor of Surrey, leads over Baltej Dillon.
Oh no, there's
29 votes.
There's multiple different seats, so it's like that. There's different like ridings, and they each are electing a different like candidate to represent their riding in the provincial legislature, and then the leader of the party with the most seats becomes premier.
Sir, 2-1, 1 vote lead, so we don't have any real sense here. And this is a riding where we spent a lot of time talking about Surrey South. Brent Chapman, controversial comments on a social media post. He's leading by 734 votes. Our colleague Grace Key went looking for answers. He wouldn't take our questions. He is leading by 734 votes over Haroon Ghaffar. And just last stop in this Fraser Valley area is here in Langley Willowbrook. We showed this to you earlier, still very close, 394 votes. Jody Tour leads over Andrew Mercy, the incumbent. 6 of 20, and I want to get all the way out for just one moment here because there's one riding that's standing out.
Oh, I forgot Liv Agar is Canadian.
And this is a trend that we thought about early on, but it seemed like the Conservatives had...
Liv, how are you not going to have... She's got goddamn Rachel Gilmore. She's got the Surfs. I know that other guy. I know the other two. Their names aren't coming to me. I'm getting shafted.
It's very interesting here.
What do you mean I'm not on this panel, Liv?
That bottom line. So we finally got that Skeena vote.
Most professional Canadian...
Oh, it switched again.
Twitch
So
reporter, streamer in Ottawa.
And this is what Elections BC
It's very
is doing
specific,
to us.
but I am
putting
the
a
most
lot of
successful
data
in that very
very
specific
quickly,
category.
And those numbers are changing. I'll show you 2 ridings that just
Boots,
flipped.
that's the one.
So this island right here in North Island just flipped, and I'll show you what that looks like. Anna-Kindy leading by 37 votes. Look at this.
And
So
like,
these
how
the
are you
vote
going to
switches
do
as
a
we're getting
Canadian
more data into the system.
political
We can
panel
see
and
the
not have the
Conservatives have now
Ottawa
taken the
bubble
lead
perspective?
there.
The
They're
most
now up
important
49
perspective.
to
We all know
42.
this.
And we look at Courtney Comox as well. Again, a one that just flipped. I'll show you what that looks like. The NDP got off to an early lead. The Conservatives have been picking that up. For our listeners on CKNW,
What everyone in
what I'm
BC is
showing
thinking
now
right now
is
is,
a bar
what is
graph
Ottawa
that we're at
thinking about
40% of
this?
the polls reporting, and the Conservatives
what-
have just taken their first lead in the riding of Courtney Comox.
Anytime Ottawa's
You'll
not on
remember,
screen, all of the other
it was the
characters
one
should be
that was the
asking, what is
closest
Ottawa
back
doing?
in 2017.
Where's Ottawa? What are they
Again, tonight, it could
thinking?
be part of the story. 49, 42, 2 is that
Oh
bottom
shit, it's
line,
like all of the
and there's
Canadians are.
lots of
Surfs
things
are
moving around.
online,
Here's
Live,
another one that
Igloo's
just
online.
flipped. Wanda Fuka-Malahat, 10 of 24 polls reporting. The Conservatives leading here by 83 votes over the New Democrats. This is a riding that was a big part of John Horgan's old riding, the safest NDP seat in 2020. They split out Souk, added it to Shawnigan Lake, Mill Bay. The fact that
What are they talking about? Let's listen in.
aren't allowed to say no to you having pets.
They're also going to subsidize landlord
Congrats.
rent, so it's like a back and forth. You can't.
They've got good housing in this city.
Yeah,
It sucks
yeah.
'cause, like David
Morgan,
Eby,
yeah.
he's
Ottawa's the
pretty
capital of
radical.
the
He's
country.
been arrested for,
Yeah.
like,
It's not a province, it's in
he wrote a
Ontario.
book on how to sue police, like that. Like he was all pro.
Yeah, everyone
legalization
loves
of drugs.
Ottawa
I
so
used to
much
be
in Canada. The
pretty
rest
far
of
left,
Canada
and
loves
he's really
Ottawa.
moved closer to the center. Like,
That's
there's way
this
more
is the thing we all
bolsification
know.
than, say, like AOC, I think.
Bolsificate. I like that
Yeah.
term.
Particularly in like Alberta and
I think
Saskatchewan.
Centre
They
is still
just can't
NDP,
stop.
but
They
for-
can't get
for
enough of
small
Ottawa.
margin for now, which is unusual.
So
Yeah,
that's
this
it.
is
No.
anxiety-inducing.
We're far from it being called at this point. There's still a lot
I
of-
think so far it's
49-42,
looking pretty good
damn.
for the NDP
It
on
is.
like really
It is.
important districts. Like West
But they're not called, though. That's the thing, I guess.
Chandra Herbert winning again re-election there very easily. Very strong NDP riding in Vancouver West End. Again,
And this is
popular
popular vote now.
It's
David,
listed
the
as
numbers at the
hypnotic.
bottom, it may not reflect that, but the NDP is certainly in the lead with popular vote.
That's why we're not going to call this yet, because the popular vote is still sort of guides sometimes the ridings. The NDP won the election in '96 with less popular vote than the BC
NDP's
Liberals.
been elected in
Usually
4,
NDP's
though,
votes
and
considered to be
Conservative
more
only 1.
efficient. There's much more populous in the key ridings, but right now it's not translating in what you see at the bottom of the screen, which is not reflective of the popular vote. It's really the Conservatives with a significant lead. Now it's shrunk. Again, get used to this. This is going to be ping-ponging all night. 48,
Swinging
42,
like a
that's gonna
jazz
go up
band,
and
as
down,
that
up
one
and
guy
down,
said.
Up and down. We could end the night with neither party at 47, but we still got a long ways to go.
And the Greens showing up. 2 ridings where they're leading.
Yeah, and I just noticed Beacon Hill now is in the Grace Laura has a
There you
lead
get
there.
the National
so
Capital
Sonia
Region
Friston's
should
no
be its
longer
own
leading there.
province, but that's just
but
because.
I think,
Or like
Richard
make it
may know
like
where that
DC or
second
something.
Green seat is.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that in a moment.
But I
just wanna
mean, I don't
focus
think
first in
DC.
the
I think
Okanagan,
everyone
but
in
we'll get
DC
there, I
would be like,
promise,
"Don't
Keith,
do
I
it, no."
promise. The independents are a big story tonight. We knew this, and we'll see.
Oh, yeah, the
where
Freedom
they were pulling
Convoy.
vote, 'cause I want to show you 2 of the closest races in the entire
Remember when
province
all the
right
truckers
now.
showed up in
Vernon
Ottawa?
Lundby,
Wouldn't
Dennis
leave for a couple of
Giesbrecht,
weeks?
was the United candidate in Kamloops, moved here when Peter Milobar joined the Conservatives.
like a
He loses by
lamer
49
January
votes. But the
6th.
key here is Kevin Acton.
That happened
How
like
many
a
votes can he pull? He was the
few
former
weeks
BC
later.
United candidate in this riding. Harwinder Sandhu is the incumbent. 19 of 26 polls reporting. That is a lot of data we have there. And you'll notice that bottom line, 48, 43 to 2 now. That's the key number to keep watching.
What a
And I wanna
tiny
focus
riding.
right in on Kelowna Centre.
Kelowna Centre,
Just a
okay.
95-vote lead. So the question is, Michael Humer, again, the BC United candidate, how much is he pulling away from
Loyal
Christina
Woodridge
Lowen, the
looks like that
Conservative
one guy
candidate?
from,
As Loyal Woodridge, this is the one that the NDP thought, if we're going to have any pickups, this
that
could
one
be one
actor?
of those pickups. As you see that screen, 48, 43, 2 again.
The
a
guy who was in
reminder
House of
there.
Cards.
And we'll go all the way back out to take a look at where that is. And here we go, Keith. I got it for you. We're going to focus in on this riding on partly Vancouver Island and then the islands themselves, Saanich North and the islands.
Yeah, no,
Bob
I went
Bauer's
down
taking
for
lead. This is
the
Adam
1 year.
Olsen's Old riding, I'll show you this. Look,
rally.
this is
And then I also
a
was down
true
there for the
three-way
actual
race.
thing for a bit.
And
Not Kevin
we
Spacey.
expected it was
It's the
going
bald
to
guy.
be, but you can see how tight it is. It's quite incredible with almost 70% of the polls reporting. So we have a lot of data there. This is incredibly close.
Ooh, NDP elected in 9 now.
In that one, but
3 for the
really,
Conservatives.
there's a lot shaping up here, and this is another one of the closest ridings in the entire province. Just 34 votes. John Corey. There was a sense from the Conservatives. They felt something was happening on Vancouver Island. A lot of that has to do with a man named Aaron Gunn. He was booted out of an opportunity to run for the BC Liberals for leadership. He then helped guide this vessel that is the BC Conservative Party. He's running federally for the Conservatives in the northern
Aaron
part of
Gunn
Vancouver
is like the
He's tapped into something on the island.
YouTube video
Sonia
guy.
First announced old riding in part, the
Not
Duncan
to like
part,
to
and the
completely
Conservatives
just
leading
reduce
here with the
him
Greens
to
running
that,
down
but
in
like
third,
he makes
and
YouTube
it is
videos.
incredibly close back and forth race between the two of them, and one that seemingly keeps switching, and another extremely close riding on the island. Anna Kindy leads by just 72 votes. Again, Michelle Babchuk is very popular, local, but there's something happening on Vancouver Island around a conservative sentiment, and they are tapping it into that
Vancouver
tonight. You know, the
Island,
Free
interesting.
Enterprise Coalition, the Centre-Right Party, however you want to describe them, they had nothing on the
Anna
island coming
Kindy
into
leads
this.
by
And now
71
they are
points,
leading on
14 to
3 on the
40.
island, and they are really sweeping in. That story remains. I just want
Just
to show
the
you
north
one
and
last
the
thing
south. Big
before I
old
go back
pincer
to you
move.
guys. Richmond. We focused in on Richmond. 2020, look at this. Orange, Richmond, right?
Richmond's down here.
2024, blue. And it's these 3 ridings right here that includes
Oh.
Richmond Centre with incumbent or with independent Wendy Yuan,
That
a
one just went
non-affiliated
dark.
candidate. Is she pulling away from the Conservatives? No. This is a
One thing about
big
politics,
lead
how do
for the
journalists,
Conservatives.
politicians remember
And
names?
Han
Politicians.
Chan, and it looks like
You got to
he's
write it
heading
all
to,
down.
A win here, considering that there's 15 of 17 reporting. Again, haven't declared it yet, but this looks very strong for the Conservatives there.
Yeah, I think Gunn's
And this
probably
one
been
was
consulting on
expected to
some
be
of the
closer. Michelle Molyneux, the Conservative,
latest
leads by
conservative
365
like
votes. So we
videos
said
that
it
they've made because
all
they
along,
have
you know,
very
Keith,
similar like
Sophie,
pacing
Chris,
and
we said
editing
it.
styles.
This election was going to come down.
That's all
in
just
part to Vancouver
a guess,
Island,
but
Richmond, and Surrey, and all of those places are coming out for the Conservatives as they lead 43-2, and we haven't seen a lot of variance in that in a while, so there is stability in their vote here as we keep waiting for more results to come in.
Very high percentage of polls reporting now, Richard, so we're getting a much
the
clearer
province,
picture.
as it looks.
We're not saying this is the way it's going to end up, but it's more likely now that we're getting closer to the
Right.
point where we can call things.
And so far, the independents not leading in any of the ridings where they're running. Record number of independents
Interesting.
running, but they might be playing a factor.
They've won 10,
as
but they're only
Richard's pointed
leading
out.
in
Not
33.
the factor potentially we thought could be there in Richmond, where the independent candidates so far aren't allowing the NDP to solidify their hold on Richmond. The former
Yeah,
BC
South
independents.
Island, that
But again,
whole bit
some
on
of
the
these- I'm
north
just
of
looking
the
at
island.
Some of the ridings here. Some of these ridings are reporting with
Some
like
green
less
in
than
there.
2% of the polls in here. But now we've got David Eby
Cowichan
elected from
Valley,
Vancouver Point Grey.
Wanda
That's our second
Fukumalat.
leader elected after. Now we've got Grace Lohr,
Quebec, but they're yes,
continuing
they're the
to
ones that
boost
are
her
like
lead
majority
over Sonia
French, and
First.
French
That's
is the first
becoming
language.
fairly
But there's other
significant there
provinces
for
that
the
have
NDP
large
in Victoria,
or
BC.
larger.
And for the Green Party,
Yes, if their leader gets defeated, that's bad news. And John,
French
like I said,
language,
as we reported earlier, very
populations.
easy win there in
Francophone
the Chaco
populations.
Lakes. Again, no one was expecting anything different than that. And this, again, very strong, historic riding for the NDP, New Westminster, Coquitlam. The first time New Westminster has not appeared as its own name on a ballot since 1871, when our first election was actually held. It has to actually share a name with Coquitlam now.
We're seeing the numbers move around again. The Conservatives
46,
now
45.
leading with 46, 45 for the NDP and the Greens in 2. Vancouver Little Mountain, this was going to be an interesting riding to watch. Some big names there. Christine Boyle looks like she's going to Victoria from Vancouver City Council.
Almost a 7,000 vote lead there.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
No, you go ahead.
Adrian Dix, I told him we weren't going to spend a lot of time on his riding because there's no drama there. It used to be called Vancouver Kingsway.
Pretty solid.
Now Vancouver Renfrew, he's coming back to Victoria. And this is where Brenda Bailey jumped into this riding from the
Vancouver South
Falls
Granville,
Creek.
right?
Vancouver South Granville, where she had been in Vancouver Falls Creek, which was less friendly than NDP. This is much more friendly, as you can see, almost more than an 8,000 vote lead. And Richard wants in.
Yeah, because this is one of the most incredible scenarios I've ever seen. And, you know, we're not done yet, but imagine this situation. 46-45, the Greens hold the balance of power too, but their leader has lost. and they end up having two newcomers in the legislature, in Jeremy Valeriet and Rob Botterill, who end up having to negotiate a deal, and it's unclear who the leader even is. And I want to show you where that riding is that just flipped. And we described it earlier as one of the closest in the entire province, and it's right here in Vernon-Lumby. So it's about the efficiency of this unaffiliated candidate, Kevin Acton, who is running for BC United, pulling from the Conservatives, and Harwinder Sandhu leading by just 51 votes. That is, in essence, how close this is. The NDP holding on to these seats in part because of help from independents. Yes, it hasn't shown everywhere, but it is one of the places where it's personifying what we may see tonight as we start seeing again a solidification of these results.
Razor thin right now, 46 ridings for the Conservatives at the moment, the NDP with 45 and the Green Party with 2.
Jordan Armstrong is down at the Conservative headquarters. We'll check in with him tonight along with Mike Smith of CKNW. Jordan?
Yeah, Chris, this race is spandex tight, and pretty much everybody here has their eyes glued to the results. I think even the line to get a drink has died down. I don't think anybody's waiting. Everybody's just paying attention to the numbers that are coming in at a rapid pace. Mike, the Conservatives seem to be doing what they need to do if they're going to pull this off.
Yeah, if they were going to make history tonight and actually win this election, they had to punch through in places
I forgot
like
I
Richmond,
muted myself
Surrey, the Fraser
cookies,
Valley,
but
some
if
of these
this,
key
if
ridings
this
in Vancouver
holds,
Island, and they appear to be doing exactly that. This room
That's
is
nuts.
absolutely electric in here tonight. It was cautiously optimistic at the start of the night,
also,
but now they can
Chaff,
feel like
was
maybe
that you
we can
who
pull
said
this
this?
off. It is super close, as you
I don't have the
mentioned, but
chat
they are winning where they need to
history
win to
anymore.
make this happen. It ain't over till it's over.
But
And
who
it could
said
be a long
tie
night before
with
we get a
Greens
final
in
answer
the
here.
the
But
balance
this
of power?
People here are super excited.
They're having a good time. It's starting to fill up. I haven't seen John Rustad just yet, but the party president is here. We're hoping to speak with her a bit later on.
This is your
We'll send
fault.
it back to you for now.
All right. Thank you very much, Jordan. Thanks, Mike.
Looking at some of these close races, 16 votes separating the Conservatives and the NDP and Wanda Fuka-Malahat. Okay, just to recap here, the NDP leading or elected now in 46. So we're flipping these numbers back and forth. The Conservatives now in 45. Greens still holding on in 2.
And Bruce Banman, as expected, elected quite easily in Abbotsford South. That is certainly a very safe riding for that party. Kamloops North Thompson. Again, the NDP came close in 2020, but this is a rural riding and favors more conservative leaning parties, and that's what's happened tonight. Peace River North, this is where Dan Davies was really hoping to win as an independent. I thought he had a much better chance than this, but this is basically over. Jordan Keeley of the Conservatives winning there over Dan Davies, the incumbent. Lauren Dirksen had left the BC United Party to sit as a Conservative, and he's winning easily and has been elected in Caribou-Chilcotin.
So here's a look at the popular vote as things stand right now. The NDP just under 45% of the popular vote, and the Conservatives right behind them with 43.2%. So the Greens with 8.4% and others with 3.4%. Richard, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to show you the two ridings that have flipped here. So let's focus on Courtney Comox, 290 vote lead for Ronna Ray Leonard with 19 of 25 polls, and you can see heading into that last poll, she just flipped that lead. I want to go to show you in Richmond.
Oh yes,
right
no,
in
yeah,
here, nice
I
and
always
close.
forget that.
And give you a sense of what's going on in Richmond. So we see the NDP in the lead, and it's because in part of Kelly Green. She leads by 73. And the trend line has been back and forth, like a up and down, like a yo-yo for these parties. But it's extremely close right now with 80% of polls reporting there. And that's why the NDP is now in the lead because of the flips in those two ridings.
All right.
And with the numbers as they sit, it would be the Greens that hold the balance of power. We'll see what the strategy panel has to say about this all. They're with Jazz Johal, and he is with the Hotel Pacifico podcast crew as well. Jazz.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we've been following all of this very closely and looking at the numbers as well in front of us. Let me go to you first, Mike McDonald. What are you seeing at this moment?
What I'm
sometimes
seeing is Conservatives
it's
doing very well in their strongholds.
like
winning
a
about 20
part
out
of a
25
town,
in the
depending
interior.
on how
They're
big the
sweeping
city
Fraser
is.
Valley. The surprise, I think,
sometimes
so far
it's
in
an
the
area
results
that can
is
be
still
parts
early,
of multiple
is how well they're
towns.
doing in Surrey, how well they're doing
It's all
in
based
Richmond.
on like geography and population size, and then they we just had a redistribution process that just completed a little while ago. So there'll be a whole new riding map.
But right now, I'd have to say the Conservatives are maximizing where they needed
Currently,
to do well.
there's
The interior of the
338
Fraser Valley for
seats
sure,
in
and winning some of those, at least leading in some of those battles
in the
Surrey and Richmond.
federal
Jeff,
parliament.
what are you seeing right now? I mean, when
I don't know how many
the
seats.
issue of Surrey and Richmond, I mean, there is a different
Well,
reality
47. I
when
can.
you're talking
So
to
47.
Cantonese-speaking voters, Mandarin-speaking voters, Punjabi-speaking voters. How do you sense those two areas and how the NDP actually approach
so
those
92 in
communities?
BC?
Well, I think it's different in each case. I'm very heartened by the fact that my friend George Chow is winning in Fraserview. We talked earlier about how that riding seems to lead the province as a bellwether. But
87.
Those
I'm an idiot.
communities are very diverse. They've got very different interests, and there are a lot of issues arising for them that campaigns needed to speak to. Maybe the extra analysis is going to be required there to figure out
Then how is
clearly,
47
crime and
majority?
drugs was a big
I'm
issue
not.
for some of the Chinese Canadian voters.
Yeah, crime and drugs and Soji as
Someone
well.
explain
I'm
this
just
to me,
looking
what
at the
I'm missing.
numbers as
Did
you
they
were
do
speaking. I think it switched over
redistribution?
to 47-44 and it keeps changing. But Kate, let me go to you. What are your thoughts right now? What are you seeing?
Well, there's a lot to think about right now, and
Yeah.
it keeps moving, and you're hearing it behind us as people react. But let's say two things to take away from this. So certainly the Conservatives are winning where they need to win. They seem to have some real inroads in Surrey and Richmond, and I think there's some important questions to ask about the unusual
What am I
demographics
missing?
we saw behind
How is-
support
if
for
they
the
have
NDP
87
and support for the
seats?
Conservatives, namely that younger voters seem to be going to the Conservatives, right? And that's going to help them in those ridings. So, and also going to be kind of a bedrock of that kind of
Watch the
discontent. My
election
life
at
is
home.
unaffordable, and maybe
It's
a
an-
real
it's an
alignment we're
election
gonna need
night
to
party.
watch.
It's
The
what's
other thing I
kinda
just
what
wanna
we're
name,
doing.
Independents don't look like they're going to get elected tonight, but they are a major factor in some really tight races, and I think we're going to be looking back on that and seeing them as the difference makers.
Mike, I
That
wanna go back
person
to you for
filming
one
with their iPad.
Final point here, which is Brent Chapman. Lots of news in and around some of his past tweets, offensive tweets according to the Muslim Association, Muslim organization. They've certainly raised that issue. Mr. Eby, in the final days of the campaign, actually visited the Muslim communities as well. Yet, when you look at the numbers, sizable South Asian population, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus.
No, I
and
think
at
that
the
there's
end of the day,
probably
they seem
some.
to be
There's
winning the
they're probably had a couple of drinks by now.
I'm looking at Vancouver. I'm looking in the North Shore where there's a lot of moderate voters. They're turning North Van Seymour
they're
looks very
absolutely
strong
real.
for the NDP. City of Vancouver could be 11 out of 12.
You better
for the
start
NDP.
believing in
So the
election
impact of
parties,
Brent
Camilla.
Chapman may have been
You're
felt
in
other
one.
places where there's lots of moderate voters that may have considered the BC Liberals in the past, but couldn't go to the Conservatives.
Man, the numbers, as we're talking, continue to change. So we're going to toss it back to you, Sophie,
No comment,
and Chris,
cool using
and
mammal.
Keith, and Richard, because as we're talking, I see numbers going up and down. So you guys pick it up. We'll keep watching and get back to you.
Yeah, we might be a long way from knowing exactly how
Oh
this
my
thing
God,
is going to settle
Tristan
out.
Hopper
We are at a
did an
majority
analysis.
of polls reporting in most
I know, I
ridings,
gotta
but
resist.
this thing is going back and forth and will continue.
Yeah,
to
And
do
let's
that.
just recap the numbers. The
Oh,
NDP
Eric Grenier's
leading
got a live
four
stream
elected to
going.
47
2.3
ridings, which is that magic
thousand
number.
people
The
watching.
Conservatives with 44,
The
the
RIP,
Greens with 2.
live
And it, see,
stream.
it just keeps,
And they've just
it
flipped
keeps
again,
ticking.
48-43.
Damn.
So they're at that mark, but of course we're not calling it yet because some of these, I haven't gone through all the ridings, but there's a good dozen or so that are really,
That's
really tough.
incredible
And they're continuing
numbers.
to flip back and forth. I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Conservatives with 48 and the NDP
No, we
with
got
43.
11. 11
Within
is
5 or 10
great.
minutes. This
11
how
is
close
hell
some of
yeah.
these races are. And Richard is chomping
Well,
at the bit.
we have
wanting to get in
some
here.
we have some races I think we want to show you. Some
Okay.
close races.
So I think
yeah, let's take a look.
For a
These are
while,
close
my
races.
average
close
viewer
races
As
and-
I
was
mentioned,
like
3 ridings held by the NDP right now, held by
4
less
or
than
5.
75 votes in each
So
of those
I'll
ridings.
take it.
And then by contrast, Surrey City Centre, normally a very strong NDP riding, the Conservatives with a narrow 48 vote lead there. And Maple Ridge East, formerly Maple Ridge Mission, again, election after election, a very close race, no difference tonight. And Richard Seatston, now the NDP, has suddenly jumped into the lead there with just a lead of 122. Amon Singh, the incumbent there.
All right, Richard, back and forth, back and forth.
It's quite incredible, and I'll show you where these are flipping. And one of the storylines we're going to hear a lot about are those candidates that seemed controversial for the Conservatives, and there seemed
It's a
to
lot
be
more.
a very
Yeah, it's
strong
very difficult to
potential
do
United
sort of
candidate that got
gerrymandering
turned
just
down.
because
I'll
of
show
the
you one of those
process
in a moment.
for
That's one of the
redistricting
flippers.
and
It will be a
redistribution.
cliffhanger, as they say. North Island, though, this one looking like a cliffhanger too. Michelle Babchuk is up by
Oh, like
154
when they like
votes,
make the shape
21
of
40
the
polls reporting, has been a
the
back and
district
forth race all night
like
long.
super
So let me
weird,
solve
so that they
mystery
can make
for
sure
you right
only
now
people
that I
who are
alluded to.
like
We're gonna
or
go
make it
into
so
Vancouver.
the
We're
majority
gonna
of
go
the
to
people
riding
in
of
that area are
Vancouver,
most
Langara.
likely to vote for
We'll
him. I don't know
focus
why
in
I'm
on
doing so many
this.
hand motions.
Sunita Deer has taken a 273 vote lead here over Brian Bruget. Jamie Stein was a BC United candidate, seen as a
Oh,
rising star in the
this will be
party.
interesting.
There was interest for him running for the Conservatives, but some people
There's
within
quite
the
a bit
party
of controversy
said,
about
we're
some
committed to Brian.
past comments
He's
on
the
Brian
one that
Bruget.
we want here, and so far Sunita Deer leads by 273 votes early in the campaign. Jazz had shared some controversial comments that Brian had made in the past, and you'll see how close this is. It is
gerrymandering sucks because it just basically it's like you're like fixing the
which is going to be one of those really interesting ones to watch.
In your district to make it more likely that your party will win.
I thought the Conservatives needed to make inroads in order to win this election, and so far they are leaning NDP. Yes, there's a lot of efficiency happening in Surrey for the Conservatives and Richmond for the Conservatives. That's the big stunner. But Susie Chant leading by more than 3,300 votes in North Van Seymour is an incredibly good sign for the New Democrat there, and we'll focus in on this riding as well, Coquitlam Burke Mountain. Not such a big gap. This was one of the closest races in 2017. Jody Wickens lost a heartbreaker. Just 87 votes in that election. The NDP won it last time, but with Finn Donnelly. So Jody Wickens is leading by 371 votes in a race that has gone back and forth as we have now more than 80%.
The plebs live streaming. Everyone's streaming.
Those are the key ridings. There was another flip just now. You'll notice on the bottom of your screen, another one just flipped. 46-45-2 it is now. Again, we're in that situation where we would have a minority government. So we'll get to some of those ridings in a moment that have been flipping because there are just so many close seats all over the map. I think I've spotted one here in Courtney Comox. This has been close,
CBC
back
live
and forth.
stream. We can jump in on there too.
129 vote lead. Brennan Day leading incumbent Ronald Ray Leonard.
Hartwell is leading over by 380 votes over the incumbent longtime politician Nathan Cullen for the NDP there. So
yes, like depending on which district or riding you're voting for, so it determines which candidate you have.
Donegal Wilson leading by more than 1,200 votes over the NDP incumbent.
There's a power outage in Cuba.
Polls reporting.
And we keep going in Fraser Nicola. Tony Luck for the Conservatives leading by 965 votes over Francine Joe with the NDP, 3,300 votes, 24 of 43 polls.
These people don't have big iPad. Yeah, you're right.
2020 vote. It was a bit of an anomaly. It was fought at the height of the pandemic. John Horgan was unusually popular, and his popularity seemed to cross party lines. And people weren't willing to make a change in government when, in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic, people were looking at.
I mean, wasn't our system kind of designed at that same sort of time too, Shaft?
So again,
that's how like
race there, 46-44.
The parliamentary system was designed a lot earlier than that.
Either small number of polls reporting or have a really close, very short gap.
I will say, as close as Courtney Comox is, my results here say Kelowna Centre is there's only a 51 vote spread right now. Yeah. Is that the one you want to talk about?
I want to show you one that's even closer. No, it's even closer than that. Look at this. Surrey City Centre, you know what that means?
Oh,
tie. Like, this is incredible. So a tie in Surrey City Centre with 18 of 20 polls reporting.
Wow.
This is as close an election. We have so many ridings across BC that were within 100 or 200 votes. And ultimately, that is why we are nowhere close, I think, at this point, to being able to tell you who's going to win this election. We are still winning. And Elections BC, again, is delivered. These polls are coming in fast. And this tie here, again, Surrey City Centre, this historically was very safe for the NDP. Bruce Ralston's old riding, one of the largest margins in the province. So we're going to keep watching this one for you.
And Surrey's very close. Panorama, Guildford, Cloverdale, and Serpentine, all
now
very
it's
close
46-44 to Green.
It goes back to the message that we have. We always try to repeat before an election. Every vote matters. There's going to be a lot of people sitting on the couch going, oh man, I really wish I went out and voted because what a difference
but
it's
there was
make.
a giant river running through my street, so I stayed home.
Keep an eye on these numbers for you while we take a short
break.
Maybe
you can be forgiven.
And I guarantee there's going to be a surprise on the backside of it.
They're going to be so freaking close. If we even get a result tonight. With how close things are going. Please don't joke about doing election fraud in my stream. Tool using mammal. No, you can't, Camilla. All right, what's the?
To pick a speaker, governing with a majority.
Oh, never mind.
A bare majority becomes difficult.
There are a lot of cheers going up, but people are also slightly nervous. They're keeping their eyes on their television sets. And I'm joined by BC Conservative strategist Brad Zubik. And I mentioned to him
Oh, they've got
earlier
48-43.
that
Interesting.
there are lots and lots of younger people here in the crowd. And it's
What's
a
the,
Saturday night. So, Brad, can you tell me?
Oh, Google has the same, or Global has the same thing. 48-43.
Yeah, obviously, young people is our strength.
Interesting.
It's a fundamental paradigm shift, federally and provincially, where older voters support Liberals, they support New Democrats. Younger voters are excited about Conservatives. They're the ones being impacted by the
Ridings are just like the districts.
crime, economic insecurity. Young people are the ones being impacted by quite frankly, these.
Just like an organizational structure by sort of area.
Now, what was the BC Conservatives campaign strategy?
Yeah, lozenge would probably be pretty good.
You were mentioning that you may not have some of the campaign infrastructure and the ground game, but you did have something else.
Well, we have momentum. I mean, we had a desire for change that really played into our message. We had David Eby, quite frankly, with very few accomplishments to sell. We wanted to highlight those, and we wanted to highlight we had real solutions or positive solutions.
Yeah, and one of the focuses that you had mentioned was a focus on digital and social platforms.
Yeah. Well, that's what young people listen to. That's what our voters listen to. We didn't ignore, obviously, the mainstream traditional media, but we really went after those young voters because those are the ones that are demanding change. Life is not working for them. They're the ones moving to Alberta, leaving the province. We want to keep them home. We want to give them hope. We want to give them a prosperous future. So that was our focus this campaign.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about was the sign that Chip Wilson had outside his home. Now, outside his $80 million home, a sign basically calling the BC NDP communist. Do you think that helped?
Oh my God, you tweeted it out too.
I think it was probably irrelevant. I mean, I kept.
This is all your fault.
My phone, I couldn't get
Shaft.
up enough to read it. Listen, I mean, honestly, these are frivolous issues in a society with an overdose tragedy, in a province with rising violent crime, in a province with economic issues.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Brad. That's Brad Zubik, campaign strategist with the BC Conservatives.
All right, Mira Baines, thank you very much. Our Mira Baines reporting from Conservative.
We still have a lot of close races. The Surrey City Centre, the gap is widened.
Widened? Is it widened? Is that what we call it, Sophie? It sure is widened.
It's
split wide open to a lead of 1 from a tie of 0. I joke, Sophie, obviously. It is like, what are these things? And
this is nuts.
I've talked a lot about this in the past. 2017. I don't want to reminisce too much about it.
But you'd have to make
Dawn
sure it
McCrae
was an ID of someone who is also on the voter rolls.
They have a new candidate, Ronald Ray Leonard
for
wins.
that riding.
Bruce Ralston decides not to run.
And there's
if
different
this is
voting
the one that
locations in each riding.
I'm not sure how Bruce Ralston sort of looks at the situation because incumbents always have an advantage. But let's move around a little bit. Just a wide margin here. Amna Shah leading by just 1 vote. What an incredibly close race with 18 of 20 polls reporting.
Camilla doing a one-person.
We've tracked here, and this is going to be really interesting to follow. You'll notice just a 40-vote lead. Well, they don't have. There's something going on with the polling in Surrey Cloverdale. This we know is going to be one of the closest
no
races
polls reporting in, but there's votes.
We expected going into this. We just don't have a lot of data here. So we're going to try to figure out what's going on there. You know, this is a new system from Elections BC. It seems to be going very, very well. So I just wanted to flag that for people.
Well, I'm
going
to be on record as saying that I'm advising all of my streamers not to do election fraud.
And again, we're at 19 of 23 polls
bad,
reporting, but it's only a 181 vote gap for Lawrence Mock. And all night, it has been so close and has gone back and forth. And this closeness of this race is what makes it so interesting in that regard. But the New Democrats are in that lead again, up 48. And one of the reasons they're in the lead is because of this right here.
Mike Starchuk is a daddy.
Kelly Green's lead is growing. She's the incumbent of Richmond-Steveston. It could be because Jackie Lee is pulling votes away from the Conservative. Michelle Molyneux as Kelly Green leads by 501 votes. And I just want to go over to Vancouver Island quickly because that's one of those places where the Conservatives are hoping to have breakthroughs. And yes, this is the one that remains extremely close. 194 votes. Brennan Day, he was a BC Liberal candidate last time around. He is now the Conservative candidate. He leads Ronald Ray Leonard, the incumbent. And it's one of those ones, again, that has been close all night. And you know it gets close when I have the notepad out, because there are so many close races to follow. But the Conservatives haven't been able to have their breakthrough down here in southern Vancouver Island. They maybe thought they could, and I'll get rid of this quickly so I can get right in to Vancouver Island here. And I'll show you one that John Rustad visited. He was hoping to break through an Oak Bay Gordon Head, but Stephen Andrew running a distant third here as Diana Gibson has been elected for the NDP in that riding of Oak Bay Gordon Head.
Or type it.
And we'll take one last look here, and I want to focus in on this extremely close race. And again, it comes down to this idea. And Kate Hammer was hitting this point as well. Were the independents the one that pulled away enough here to help the NDP as they lead now? It's 47-44, so one of those close ones.
Who's the Conservative candidate there?
Moment. But Loyal Wooldridge leads by just 40 votes here, and clearly Michael Humer is pulling some from Christina Lowen and the Conservatives. The NDP had some hopes about this riding. They did spend some time in the Okanagan, and you can see why, because it has been so close. So we'll go back to you guys, and I'll take a look to see at the one that's flipping, because it seems like it's going to be one of those really close spots. I do have a suspicion here that we're going to go back into Surrey, and yeah, this is exactly where it is. It's Surrey City Centre. So lead grows to 9. So this is one of those things, like, Sophie, it is really quite incredible to watch how close this is. With 18 of 20 polls reporting, it is so close, and now just a vote lead of 8 for the Conservatives in that riding.
And you have a recount at what percent, like an automatic recount at what percentage?
Very small number. I should have looked that up in the elections.
But that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that for sure. I think
be
30, 40, 50, those sort of situations is when we start having a conversation about recounts. It depends how many votes there are in the riding, but a situation like that would be an automatic recount.
Some ridings are far less contentious. It's not nearly as close in other ridings, including Vancouver Hastings. We've got Sarah McDonald down at NDP headquarters right now with Nikki Sharma, who is way out ahead in her riding, leading by several thousand votes. Sarah.
Yeah, I believe we've already
now it's 47-4. Ooh, they're in majority territory.
As you mentioned, Chris.
I think that's the first time, or probably not.
Hastings, of course, her last mandate with the NDP was
that
as
is
Attorney General,
majority territory.
Job. As you know, Nikki, all too well, the issue of crime and punishment and social disorder became
But they're 16-16 in elected seats right now, or
How do you think that is
projection.
being reflected in the votes tonight as we watch these numbers?
I don't know if
roll
those
in
the
and
numbers
increase
Global are
support
saying as in elected seats are
I
actually
heard a lot of
elected, or
things
if
at
it's
the door when we were campaigning, and cost of
like
living
projection.
and housing affordability were always the
I'm
top.
assuming it's probably not much of,
And
like, if they're projecting
we
that,
presented
they're
our
gonna win,
solutions when it came to crime and public safety, and we'll see what happens tonight. But I'm really glad and grateful to be re-elected in Vancouver Hastings, and that community has put their faith in me.
a spanking on Twitter.
Looks
I was
like you have another
wait,
4
what?
years. What are your top priorities for the next 4 years for government? and for the
CBC has 31
Yeah, I think the
NDP
top
elected,
issues that I heard were cost of living,
27
housing, and
Conservatives?
healthcare, and
Maybe
we're
this
going to keep
isn't
working as a
loading
government
fast
if we get the trust of the voters tonight
hasn't
on those
refreshed.
challenges.
Nope.
As I mentioned, you had a huge
Well,
file
no.
as Attorney General. I'm sure you're looking back on it with a big
They
feeling
have
of accomplishment. Obviously, your
NDP
constituents
16
have voted
projected
you
to
back
win
in.
and
They're happy with your
31
performance.
leading.
When you look back at
And
your own
Conservatives
performance,
16
what are you most
projected
proud
to
of,
win
and what would you have done differently
28.
in the past 4 years?
I should just open up
It
and show
certainly
you.
was a huge honor to be the Attorney General in BC. I'm really proud of the work we did on online safety. I'm really proud of the work we did on repeat violent offenders and achieving bail reform.
Yeah, I know,
And
but
we had
are
such a
they
great
saying they
team
have
in the office? And I think there's always
like
things
30
that
that they're projected to win in?
Who is in the lead on North Coast Haida Gwaii right now. She's well known in the North Coast. She's elected Haida Council member. Of course, we have Joan Phillip, who is
election.
Tsleil-Waututh matriarch, running in Vancouver Strathcona. Of course, this used to be Melanie Mark's riding, and Melanie Mark, of course, was
They do. Interesting.
trailblazer.
It's almost
Indigenous
like
peoples and
reversed
Indigenous
for what
women,
Global has.
in BC politics. And we have another newcomer, Alia Warbus, who is
Interesting.
and she is in the lead in Chilliwack Cultus Lake.
Evie may
And
squeeze
Alia
this out
is
yet.
also very well known to her community
And hold
She's
the
daughter
balance
of well-known
and
judge,
sort of
Stephen
tie
White.
of Conservative NDP
it's fantastic
balance
to
in the
see,
West, because I think
some
that would keep it
diversity,
to
within the BC
two
Conservative
provinces,
Party as
Manitoba
well.
and
We
BC,
know that, she will
that
bring a
are
strong
led by the
voice, to the
NDP.
legislature.
Saskatchewan and Alberta led by the
Thank
Conservatives.
you so much, and of course we're going to be hearing from all of our political.
And nary a Liberal to be seen.
Right now we're going to send it to Stephen Quinn with our Political Insider panel. All right. Thank you very much, Jason. And Mo, I'm just going over this, and I'm wondering how close we are to a call. How close do you think we are to
Each
a call?
province has its attorney general. Usually the Minister of Justice is the attorney general.
Too many tight races, and there's some strange ones too, like Wandafuka Malahat. Where a seat that we should win.
And then at least at the federal level, the Minister of Justice is the
there's just
attorney
too many
general.
Races, for example, the Comox seat, which I think is about 100 votes across between the two parties, and of course the Kelowna seat, where we're ahead by about 100 votes. So, it's strange. With 80% of the vote in, you would normally detect a trend. We aren't seeing a trend sufficient to be able to make a call.
All right, and we'll get back to both
Yes.
of you in just a moment. Back to the desk.
The Minister of
Stephen,
Justice
thank
is
you
in the
very
Prime
much.
Minister's cabinet,
Well,
and they are also the
words
attorney
you need
general.
to remember tonight, folks. Too close to call.
Yes, let's take a look at some of those races right now. Surrey City Centre, the difference between the Conservative and the NDP right now, 8 votes. 8 votes. You were making the case a little bit earlier, Jason, about the importance of getting out there to vote. Yeah. Races like this certainly demonstrate that. Kelowna Centre, NDP leading the Conservatives by only 34 votes. Very close in Surrey. Cloverdale, as we were just pointing out.
8 votes in Surrey
79
Central.
votes. It looks as if they're getting a few more votes in there. Do you think they've solved the...
Now it's down to 46, 45 again.
Surrey Guildford is another one of those too close to call, as is Courtney Comox.
Here is what we're seeing.
It's a fairly major city
leading
or area.
In 46 ridings, the Conservatives only trailing by 1 riding right now. They are sitting at 45. You got to think if that holds up, the Greens are going to be particularly happy with that. They are leading right now in 2 ridings, despite the fact that Sonia Furstenau has been defeated in Victoria Beacon Hill. Speaking of Victoria Beacon Hill, this is what it looks like on Vancouver Island. All 3 colors represented right now. We can see what's really interesting here is, well, really across the island has traditionally been an NDP stronghold. You see pockets of blue, though. The North Island
population and then like demographic makeup over geographic area.
Of course, North Saanich and the Islands, Adam Olsen's previous seat, Rob Botterill right now there. Of course, strong Green presence with Elizabeth May representing that riding nationally.
It's very
as well.
confusing.
I know she was door knocking.
You're not wrong to feel that way.
Colleagues, but
just remember that,
that's what it looks like right now across Vancouver Island. Let's take a closer look at some of those races with our results desk. Dan and Michelle.
Yes, Jason, and as you said, all 3 colors on Vancouver Island, a lot of heavy campaigning on the island by the 3 leaders. Let's take a look at the share of the vote on Vancouver Island. Right now, the NDP...
Practical reality of safety, and the feeling part plays a big impact on the elections. And I think that one of the challenges the BC NDP had was they brought in this sort of new policy around decriminalization, being one of the first provinces to try it out and one of the few jurisdictions in North America to try it out. And you saw that there was a progressive element, progressive movement that really advocated for this approach to address the opioid epidemic. The jury's still out on whether it's working or not. But the NDP had to do a shift because the public wasn't with them. And
I think it's
the
every
movement
5
that
years.
had sort of championed and asked for this policy change didn't really show up. There was nobody defending this. The government had to fully just walk away from even trying to explain why they were doing it, to the point where right before the election, I think David Eby made the choice to sort of change the narrative for his party on it, because he knew he couldn't go into an election where most voters that he was trying to court aren't on side with this sort of decriminalization
Oh no, I think it's
policy.
over 2 years.
And I think it's a question for the movement on what they can do to make something like that actually popular when they haven't really
It's
defended
required
it.
by law to do
certainly.
it every 5
All right,
years.
and
but-
when we look at some of the ridings, it's obviously too close to call. But flipping, you see a very clear divide.
Because we did one in
between
this year,
south of the Fraser and
but then
north
it says
of the
the next
Fraser.
one's
We know
in
south of the
2026.
Fraser, healthcare has been a major topic, especially at Surrey Memorial Hospital. I want to get your thoughts there.
I think the race is going to be determined by whether voters want to give NDP the chance to finish what they started, to continue the plans that they have started and see them follow through.
Well, it's kind of good to do it.
Looking at what the Conservatives have to offer as, a shiny new option, and say, you know what?
You want to
We
have good
tried
data on the
what
people
you're
that live in
offering
your country.
us. We're going to go with the shiny new option and try to see if we can rescue healthcare and see that, I want to be able to have a doctor. I want to not wait for 10 hours in the emergency room.
Yeah, well, things still very close. The Conservatives now leading in 46 ridings. Let's throw it back to you, Chris and Sophie, for some more results.
All right, thanks very much, Sonia. And yeah, if you're
They
watching
send
the numbers
someone.
on the bottom of the screen, you just saw the Conservatives.
Or they
jump
mail
back
you
into the lead here.
a form to fill out and
minority
send it
government
back.
territory, but they have 46 or are leading and elected in 46 ridings. And this is a big turn of events for Sonia Furstenau, the leader of the Green Party, Keith, in Victoria Beacon Hill.
Yeah, the NDP was genuinely concerned about this. They were getting very
Oh,
nervous
no.
with Sonia Furstenau because she had that leader cachet, sort of different than just a typical outsider candidate. But Grace Lohr, again, a lead of significant. She won by about 7,400, so her lead has been cut in half. And the popular vote continues to favor the New Democrats, which is, again, those numbers down below
That's a
this. And the Green vote, you see 8.2, that basically cut in half from 2020. Green vote has been going down the last few elections, and you have to wonder what the future of the Greens are.
And if you and like
without a
if
leader in the
they're like they'll
legislature
threaten
now,
you with a
and we've got
fine,
two
and then
of
all you
them,
have to do is just
leading
fill it
in
as just
Saanich
do
and West
the
Vancouver
census.
Sky.
They won't fine you.
So a bit of a challenge for the Greens to decide what to do next.
So Sonia Furstenau not going back to the legislature. Some other big names are in tough right now, Richard.
Yeah, and one of the things too, just to that point, Sonia Furstenau hypothetically could be
No,
part
you're
of a
not. It's not
negotiating
mandatory to
team,
vote.
but not be an MLA. She has that experience from 2017. You talk about big names, Sophie. Let's look here, and we really are seeing the story of two British Columbias. The rural areas are going almost universally
fortunately
blue.
for you.
Those urban centers are stronger for the NDP, except for those areas in Surrey, which we'll get to in a moment. But let's start here. Bulkley Valley, Stikine. The Conservatives had a hunch about them. They were confident about this. Sharon Hartwell's leading Nathan Cullen by 453 votes here with 18 of 30 polls reporting. So that's when the Conservatives felt like they could activate. I want to show you, you just saw the lead flip. It's now 46-45.
Well, I mean, they give you the day off, too.
I want to show you where that is, North Island, but let's go back to the desk now, and I understand we're going to see someone pretty soon here.
In Victoria Beacon Hill, Sonia Furstenau, who has lost in her riding. Let's join her at the podium.
To be an MLA, it's not the outcome that we'd hoped for in Victoria Beacon Hill tonight, but I'm so proud of the campaign that we ran. We knew we were up against a steep hill. We were trying something bold and new, but the challenge was a little more than we could do. I'm so heartened by the support that we got. I'm so heartened. We knocked on 14,000 doors. We attended every debate. We put forward a vision for this province and for this riding that I was very excited about, a vision centered on the well-being of people and communities, on nature, and on our public institutions. I want to start by thanking the best campaign manager I've ever had,
Yeah,
Kadani
that's a
Pitt
bummer.
Chambers.
It's gotta suck. I didn't. Oh, you mean the
Kadani
leaders
had an
debate?
incredibly challenging task to run a campaign where the
No, she did
candidate
pretty
was
good.
almost never there.
For just sort of like.
They have been phenomenal, strategic, ambitious, hardworking,
For
and
the
built
third-
a team
like the third-party leader?
It really was
Held
community
her own.
building at its very best. Kadani, thank you so much. The extraordinary team at the Fort Street office were just incredible, really. It was always such a joy to walk into the Fort Street office and to really experience the happiness and joy and love that was building. Darius was always at the door. Ronnie and Peter and Beatrice
they've got
leading
higher
the
elevation
way.
than you'd think. Oh, maybe they're right. I think
it has
maybe
been
Global has
kind
their
of
elected and their
campaign that I
leading
am so
numbers
proud of.
switched.
it does appear that the Greens
Or I
are
don't
still
know.
going to play a pretty pivotal role in the BC legislature.
Because Global has 1919 for elected.
It's a
CBC
strange
has
time in politics
35-28
when
for the NDP.
During an atmospheric river, people
And then for
come out
leading,
and
Global
vote
has
for a party that's
27-26 for the
denying the reality of
NDP.
climate change. But hey,
And
this is where
CBC
we're
has
at.
11-17 for the Conservatives.
I am so
Possibly,
excited
yes,
for
possibly
Jeremy
just
Valeriot and
caution.
Rob Botterill. This is incredible.
Just having different metrics for what they can call is
This is a
for
passing
when they
of
call
the
it.
torch, and I am going to be there.
That
to
is
mentor
interesting that they
and
sort of
guide
they
and
they
lead
vary
in any
so
way
much.
that I can. There's so many thank yous to give, and it's so important to me to thank everybody. We do not get here alone. We are never alone. We're as the representatives and the elected people, there's always a team behind us. But first and foremost, to everybody who volunteered, who donated, who came and showed up, who gave us your support, thank you so much. None of this happens without you. To Maureen Balsillie, Adam Olson, and Molly McKay, the three people that led this campaign, a huge thank you to all three of you.
Hey, Mouselander, how's it going?
Passing of the torch.
I don't
Sonia
know.
Furstenau,
It's
if you're
nuts.
Just joining us, lost in her riding of Victoria Beacon Hill
been a
to
wild,
Grace Lord, the NDP incumbent, by a few
election.
thousand votes anyway, and basically is wishing good luck to the two remaining Greens who were elected. But it's Keith. What did you get out of it?
Well, she made a very good point. It appears, as it stands now, the Greens still have a pivotal role to play in what happens in the BC legislature. Right now, those two seats, when added to either the NDP or the Conservative total, would give that one of those parties a majority in the House. Now, you have to appoint a
no,
speaker, so
well,
it's a
yeah,
little
she's the
problematic
leader
for
of the Green Party,
That
and
45
she
number
didn't
includes
win
them currently holding Kelowna Centre
in her
which they have an
riding.
8
So that
vote
was her,
lead. So,
her,
again, these numbers are going to change a bit. The Conservatives are also holding a very narrow lead there as well.
Oh my God.
I don't see the Greens willingly going to work with the Conservatives. You heard her take a shot at the Conservatives, and I think Richard wants to jump in here on that point.
Yeah, because you heard Sonia Furstenau say, I'm still going to be around to provide leadership here. And she took that very divisive shot at the Conservatives, and it doesn't seem like the Greens would have any interest there. But as you described, Keith, the math is very hard. And this brings in a really challenging scenario. I think one that none of us at this point, after 28 days of campaigning, want to think about. This could be
Fucking embarrassing. Fucking embarrassing. You got a problem with can of gooses, you got a problem with me, and I suggest you let that one marinate.
time, but something so close like this with the challenge of a speaker could be something that ultimately leads to another election. But I'll show you again why we can't decide anything at this point is because of the ridings that keep flipping. So you'll see the Conservative lead 46-45 to 2.
Oh, shit, we
We'll
just
go
hit
into the
14
Okanagan
viewers.
now.
Damn.
This is the one Keith described, and I want to show you on the big screen. Kelowna Centre is the riding the NDP felt it could have a chance in, an additional riding, and the vote lead
Chapman won Surrey South.
votes. And we have 20 of 22 polls reporting. So we're starting to solidify this, and it's been close all night. And the reason why, in part, is because of Dr. Michael Humer. He was the BC United candidate. He has pulled 2,400 votes, largely away from the Conservative. And you can see Christina Lowen is just leading by just 31 votes there. There are two other ridings I want to show you quickly in Surrey, because that's partly why we have not, again, been able to declare what's going to happen here. The riding here in Surrey Centre is extremely close. 12-vote lead for Zishan Walla over Amna
leading is
Shah.
kind of a weird...
It is amazing to me. The Conservatives had a sense that this is a place they could break through. We had a hard time believing it.
But it makes, if you're going to do live TV, you got to make it exciting.
Extremely well. It was a big part of Rashtra Singh and Bruce Ralston's old ridings. It was an NDP stronghold. The Conservatives have resonated largely in the South Asian community here around some of those.
This is the Manitoba leader.
So thank you very much. I'm Dougal Lamont, and I'm the former leader of the Manitoba Liberal Party. I'm going to be stepping down. I've congratulated my opponent, Robert Loisel, for winning. I want to thank my family,
you can basically bet on elections
my wife,
now.
my children. Merci à tout le monde à Saint-Boniface. Thank you to everyone from St. Boniface who supported us, everyone who supported every single one of our candidates across Manitoba. But ultimately, the people have decided, and sometimes you get caught in a wave, and it doesn't seem to matter what you do. There's an old saying from Ecclesiastes, which I quoted the last time, that after the last election, that I saw under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle of the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. And you know, I will say, I always knew this was a possibility, but we had to hope beyond hope and keep working and do everything we could to run the best possible campaign we could, and we did. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I want to share a message I got. Thank you. And I'll share a message I got from a friend today. It said, "Our family voted Liberal today. You've been amazing throughout the campaign, providing integrity, practicality, and a genuinely strong moral compass." And I can tell you what my exact reaction was. It was, "That's really nice."
Oh, okay.
But that's the kind of campaign that doesn't win in Manitoba. You know, I've worked a lot of hard campaigns. This was
integers on that board there, but of course
46-45. Good God.
That allow the BC Greens.
This entire election is so friggin'
Here's
ridiculous.
The first one. West Vancouver Sea to Sky, Jeremy Valeriot. This was a nail biter 4 years ago, and of course, third time's a charm for Jeremy Valeriot. We're not able to call this race yet. By the way, there's still, you can see, only a lead of 588 votes that he's leading with.
He lost by 60 votes last election to Jordan Sturdy.
And quite honestly, you have to wonder what's going through his mind because, again, as I say, this vote very much still active against the Conservatives, Yuri Fulmore. Meanwhile, if we look at the other result, this is Rob Botterill. We saw Adam Olsen on stage with Sonia Furstenau a moment ago. Of course, that is the riding of Adam Olsen, who decided not to run against Saanich North and the Islands. A bit of a healthier lead here for Rob Botterill over the NDP's Sarah Riddle. 1,204 votes. And last thought I'll make
single
right
one
now
of these is so friggin'
close.
close.
Reaction from our panel is if either of those
West Van,
candidates
we have a lot of really
carry their seats, you know, did they de facto have to be one of the new leaders of the Green Party?
But isn't it? It's the
say she's happy to pass the torch. So that is also one of the factors we'll have to watch later tonight as well.
Okay, and look at
Like
these
to look
races
around.
that we're watching that are simply too close to call. Surrey City Centre right now, only 12 votes separate
I did not
the
know
Conservatives
that.
from the NDP.
Or I probably did.
Kelowna Centre is
But
another
I was gonna say
29
something stupid.
votes
That's
separating
wrong.
Conservatives and NDP. Wandahufka-Malahat, 115 votes. Surrey Guildford, 121. And Columbia River Revelstoke, 155. If those tight races continue into the evening, just a reminder that if there are fewer than 100 votes that separate the two parties, that is an automatic recount.
And it's such a
There's gonna be
close
so many
vote difference,
recounts.
of course, but we should also tell you that 84% of polls are now reporting. So yes, super close. Those could switch, and that could change the entire game. But as we tick closer and closer to that 100% mark, those results coming closer and closer to a
Just
reality
every
as
riding
well. Let's
sits
take
high.
a closer look at some of the ridings to watch for. Dan and Michelle, bring us up to speed, please.
Let's look to the Tri-Cities. What did Miss Peggy say? Well, you wanted excitement. You've got it tonight. Coquitlam Burke-Mountain Jody Wickens, the incumbent, leading by 309 votes for the NDP over Stephen Froelich.
I think we've got a bunch of systems
10,103
for
votes,
figuring
17
that
of
out.
18 polls reporting this is close. And Coquitlam Millardville, Jennifer Blatherwick projected elected with a 2,600 vote lead over Hamid Najafi. of the Conservatives.
My kids would appreciate that Miss Piggy reference. Let's head to Port Moody, Burquitlam. And the NDP candidate, Rick Glumac, was fighting for a third term. It looks like he's going back. He is projected elected in Port Moody, Burquitlam. And in Port Coquitlam, the NDP candidate, veteran politician,
rather than just a
and
TV.
MLA Mike Farnworth is projected elected there. Port Coquitlam, 22 of 24 polls reporting. And Mike Farnworth looks like he's going back to the legislature.
All right, still so much to watch for, of course. I'll bring you up to speed right now. The Conservatives currently leading or elected in 46 ridings. The NDP right now in 45.
All right, we'll check that one out then. Where is it?
And you did perform very well in the debates. That was the overall thing that we heard from our listeners and from our viewers. It's very difficult to lead when you don't have a seat in the legislature. Do you feel that it's...
What are you talking about?
to lead? Are you going to continue to lead your party?
I just resigned.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Oh no. I'm gonna have nightmares about that. Oh no.
I mean, in terms of seat, so as you look...
She missed it. Just gonna try. I can't watch that. I can't. Oh god, that's enough. I can't. That's the secondhand embarrassment is too much. I can't deal with it.
You were with the BC Liberals at the time, and now here you are.
Yeah,
at
what
the
are you
BC
talking about? Were you not listening? I just resigned.
This, and what made you join the BC Conservatives here?
Well, I'm a big fan of John Rustad. I worked with him as a caucus member, and he was always so good at standing up for what he believes in, but also being strategic. And so I've always admired that, and right through the whole campaign, he's really stayed true to himself and also was very strategic about how he did it. So, big fan.
Okay, and tonight I told you that basically you're my neighbor, and we both live in the riding of Vancouver Yaletown. What has been a big issue for you?
Well, you usually got to interview him. You always do the exit interview.
In our riding.
Well, we have a real serious issue with the drugs and the public disorder, and you know, I have friends and people that I love who are having a hard time just walking on certain streets and having to look out before they walk down a certain street. So it's no way to live in a wonderful place like British Columbia, and so definitely need to do something.
Hey, do you think they're going to do it tonight?
I'm gonna accept whatever it is, but I'm hoping for the best. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Sam. Back to the studio.
Mira Baines, thank you very much for that. What we want to do now is take you into the riding of Surrey Cloverdale. We were talking about very tight races. Well, it looks as if the floodgates have opened. Yes. And I'm not talking atmospheric river floodgates. I'm talking about finally somebody found the password to at Elections BC to allow us to see those votes because they were trickling in earlier on. Eleanor Sturco, this is the battle of the incumbents. Eleanor Sturco of the Conservatives against Mike Starchuk of the NDP. And Eleanor has a lead of 473 votes right now. With
do live interviews on the Hill. I do not have the technology for that yet.
Thank you very much. Let's turn back to our political watchers panel now.
And I'm not going to do live interviews because I do print. So like, I already have enough problems trying to ask questions in scrums because CPAC and CBC are all going to use it.
Run she had it in the BC legislature, but I would add that she had a really tough run in the BC legislature.
Like my one question to Polyev last week, CPAC and CBC ran the answer without my question cut off. I'm not mad.
To now becoming leader, and no one in the BC NDP caucus who she was working with in her first term actually wanted to talk to her.
Yeah, the Greens will have the government of power, the balance of power, and have a lot of sway over what the government does because
where the Greens
They'll
go
be able to
from here,
decide
because
who
they
is
may be in
government,
a
I think.
situation where, yes, they've lost Adam Olsen and Sonia First now, but they still have 2 seats in the BC legislature without a leader. And while Sonia was very strong in being a progressive voice on a lot of issues where I think progressives were underrepresented, issues like harm reduction and safe supply, even climate change action, under her leadership, the BC Greens were not good in terms of an organized party. We've seen how many candidates they actually ran in this election. They did not run anywhere close to a full slate.
No, I work for a
That's been
newspaper.
Something that's really hampered
We cover,
them,
it's called the Hill Times.
certainly in this
We
last
cover
term.
Parliament
So
Hill.
hopefully they can find
And
leadership,
federal
a new board,
politics.
to be able to
And then
move forward and
occasionally
become a much more dominant
some
party.
provincial stuff when there's crossover.
Shachi, of course, we operate under a first-past-the-post voting system, which means you don't necessarily
there's
have
more
to
and
have
more
a majority of
crossover.
votes to ultimately form government, which very well might be the case for the Conservatives right now. We're seeing they have 43% of the vote share. What do you make of that?
Yeah, stranger things have happened. Like, they actually have happened in BC politics. We've seen, I think, what was it, 1996, we saw this result and the same dynamics play out. But this one is going to be interesting because
It's not all
right
gossip.
now, in terms
Some of it's
percentage
gossip.
of popular vote, the Conservatives are off by about a point behind the NDP, but they are leading by a seat. Now, I expect, first of all, like, send Rockstar, send caffeine, send Red Bull, because I think we're going to be in for a long night. Give me the Haribo's ginger. I might need a sugar hit. But beyond that, I think if we continue to see this seesaw back and forth, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the Conservatives get to a magic
Which
47
emoji?
and still finish second to the NDP in terms of popular vote. That's what I'm watching right now.
Okay, by proportional representation, how would you rank those snacks in front of you there? Where does Lay's fit into this?
The winking one?
There's a sociological study that says you save the things you want for last. And
You're
you'll notice
welcome,
that I have
Auslander.
not
I know. I have to offer some of the most riveting political commentary.
That's not my strategy. That's why all the gummies are basically gone at this point.
Oh, were you talking about it on CBC?
Kept
Damn.
far away from me.
the gummy game going there, I see that. Jennifer, let me ask you as well. I think there was a real belief that we could see independents playing a major role tonight. Of course, no gray on that board, no independents winning any
It's
of
a
the
semicolon and then the close.
I would like to think it was surprising, but I'm actually
I gotta be.
not,
I gotta
because
be
we are seeing such an
completely
overwhelming,
nonpartisan view from nowhere.
amount of Conservatives turning
Head
out
empty, no
in this
thoughts,
election.
only
And the
reporting.
independents really aren't making a dent in any of the ridings where we might have seen some rise to the top and make it through to the finish line. I think it was
I mean, I think
really
you should
difficult
still
for them
try.
to put down their campaigns because of how prepared they were to run under the BC United banner. And of course, it's heartbreaking for all of them who really don't have that opportunity now.
I will say that Kevin Acton looks to be playing spoiler in Vernon Lundby. So, that might be the only riding where I've seen an independent actually have an impact.
No, that's a great point, and of course, in a race this close,
I don't
every
know.
vote matters in some of those ridings. Gloria, I should also point out our snack game
Very low.
poor compared to our political.
Do you need help? Should we send help?
You're not that far from us. Just
I
chuck
can
us a
walk it
few.
over.
I think we're okay. Dan Burrett and Michelle Elliott are standing by. They've got more results. No snacks, but you've got some results. for us.
That's right. So
Yeah,
if you
thanks.
want to share, Shachi, we're happy to take it. Look, if you look at the bar at the bottom of your screen, 46 for the NDP, 45 for the Conservatives. So as you said, Jason, if
I got to ask
Global
one
still
more
got the
question,
same
for you,
thing.
Mike. If you're a CEO sitting in downtown Vancouver, looking at these numbers, 46 NDP, 45
What do the
Conservative, 2
CEOs
for the
think?
Greens,
That's what we're
what
all
does this
wondering.
say about natural resources, forestry, mining?
Everyone in BC, in order of importance, are thinking: A, what are the hot shots in Ottawa thinking about all this? And then B, what are the CEOs thinking about this? Those are the average BC voter. Those are the two most top of mind opinions for them. That's what they really care about. Is in this order: Ottawa bubbles, and then CEOs.
The natural resource sector, natural gas in particular, I think there'd be a lot of hesitation about what increasing green influence in an NDP administration would look like.
And attracting that investment as well. So the repercussions, of course, Sophie, Chris, and Keith and Richard, not only tonight, but also on our business community and certainly attracting investment for our province as well. Back to
I
you.
always thought solicitor was like a
Jez, thank you
separate
very much.
thing from a lawyer.
We're talking about what is the scenario if this is how it ends and it becomes very difficult to govern for 4 years.
It'd be
very likely we'd be back doing this much sooner.
Yeah, it'd be very unstable. Even if you combine the 46 and the 2, someone's the speaker. It'd be a tougher. You wouldn't see a heavy legislative package because you'd want to minimize the number of votes to expose
Was he able
yourself.
to canoe to the voting station
again,
today?
Just remember, 3 ridings are still very close.
So it is
Surrey
a
Centre,
separate
52
thing.
Votes,
Okay.
Surrey Guildford 112, Kelowna Centre 47 votes, and Richard wants to jump in.
Yeah, because I want to show you those, but you're right, Keith. Like, people can't be sick, you can't miss votes. Like, it becomes very challenging to govern. This is the flip. So this is not why the NDP is now in the lead, is Wanda Fuke and Malahat. This is a battle of 2 parts of the riding. Souk largely strong for the NDP. Cobble Hill, parts. This is a strange riding because part of this was also Sonia Furstenau's old riding. So the fact that Dana Lejeunesse leads by 114 votes makes it one of the closest in the province and the one that flipped. There are 2 others that have been moving around, and that's in part why we have the NDP in the lead here. I'll show you this one of Surrey City Centre, just a 13-vote lead for Amna Shah over Zishan Walla.
13 votes.
18 of 20 reporting, and this is another one that we've seen flip. Kelly Green leads by 647 votes. It has gone back and forth, but that lead, the last poll was very good for Kelly Green. Really depends on neighborhoods in that riding. So this is looking more solid for the NDP, and we knew in order to hold on, they need to hold on to at least one in Richmond, and that may be the one, guys, that they can hold on to.
Richmond, Steveston. Yep. We shall see. All right. Thank you, Richard.
And Surrey City Centre and Kelowna Centre. And these are the ridings that...
Surrey Guildford.
And Surrey Guildford that we're going to be keeping an eye on over the next little while because it's just too close to call now.
As I just mentioned before, just a short time ago, we are likely to see at least a couple recounts. And again, we may not know the final result tonight.
All of the polls report, it's about 90% of the polls have reported in all of those super tight races, but there's still that 9 to 10% that hold all the cards.
Here's the thing, everyone around me is a conservative, like not 99% of my town, not conservative, so I know what conservatives stand to in a straight time, and I can't support it generally. And that's fair, that is your God-given right as a citizen of a democratic country. How do you get into shit posting on Twitter?
Thank you very much, Katie DeRosa at NDP headquarters in Vancouver.
Good to see
tonight.
Liv is
And
just
we've
doing
been
the same
talking
thing
about
I am,
a number
so
of areas that are battleground zones.
I don't have
for
to feel
this,
like,
election.
am I doing good content? Well, she has like 600 people watching, and I'm doing the exact same thing. 700 people.
Yeah, thanks, Gloria. I am here at the Richmond Sheraton
Should get
Airport,
XQC on to
hotel.
see what his
It is
thoughts
a
are on the
happy
BC
room.
election.
In Richmond, 3 of the 4 seats look like they are going to the Conservatives, and one for sure, Richmond Bridgeport re-elected MLA Teresa Watt. Teresa, a resounding victory for you in Richmond Bridgeport. How did you do it?
Actually, every election I just work hard, and I've been quite, I would say, they're quite popular among my constituents because they all know.
He lives in the UK?
I joined this. I don't.
I lived in like LA or something.
Because I'm an immigrant. Even though I've been here for 35 years, many of the people here
Mike
are even
Bullard.
younger than the 35 years. But I feel that I want to raise the status of immigrants and want to encourage
Also, if
them
you
to
aren't
get more involved
following,
in politics.
make
I
sure you
think
follow.
once we
Like and
emigrate
subscribe
to
on
a new
YouTube.
country,
That's
we
free.
should try to
All
get
that is
more,
free.
involved and not to be separated from the so-called mainstream community. That's why 12 years ago when Christy
let's be careful with those jokes. JMT.
yes, because my ideology aligned with the BC Liberal, and then later on BC United. Yeah.
Look, I have to ask you, as someone who crossed the floor from BC United to the BC Conservatives, if the Conservatives are able to form government, are you expecting a cabinet position?
I think always any cabinet decision is really up to the leader,
Oh, okay.
the premier.
Oh,
None of us
yeah.
should have any,
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
say in into that. It's really up to our leader to decide who is in the cabinet.
But that's what I mean. You gotta be careful because
What part of the Conservative message?
you had to explain
resonated
quite a
with
bit
the
there before I
citizens of Richmond this
understood
time
where
around?
you were coming from.
Especially my riding has about 70% Asian
What's what,
immigrants.
foreign interference?
I find that the drug policy
No, it's okay.
resonate with many of them. You have to understand the culture of the Chinese Canadian because the Opium War back in the old days. When Britain,
sort of like when a foreign country tries to covertly interfere in democratic processes. So like you try to get a candidate, like the major one is like you have like China trying to influence, like there's been allegations they've been trying to influence different federal MPs, provincial MPs. Maybe you try to like get them like get in good with an elected official, and you wine and dine them, and then you're like, hey, there's this vote coming up, and we don't really like it, so could you maybe vote against it, sort of thing.
Or visual platforms right now, and if you're tuned into Radio 1, let me tell you, a lot of blue.
No, you're
in the
fine.
north of the
I'm not going to
province.
police what you find funny.
A lot of blue as well in the interior, but it is coastal communities that are holding it down for the NDP. That's going to be an interesting talking point for us going forward to look at the ideological.
Nobody tell him where our first prime minister was born, because he's gonna shit his pants. I'm not even listening to it. It's not worth addressing. It's just
But still
bullshit.
not enough. Neither party.
Well, I'm just asking questions. Yeah, we know what question you're
both are
asking.
short.
The answer is no.
It's not exactly as the NDP would have hoped the night would go. They're in a weak position right now, to put it lightly. We'll check in at NDP headquarters right now with Sarah McDonald. Sarah?
We do have a crap ton of ministers.
Sophie
Are you
Keith,
looking
as
at the
know,
list of
every
cabinet
political
ministers?
party has a secret weapon or two behind the scenes for the NDP.
Because like half, like a chunk of them are like sub ministers to like, because it used to be, if there's a federal department, it gets a minister. But now there's like sub departments and blah blah blah. Yeah, so there's a bunch of ministers.
It is Bob Dewar. He led the NDP campaign in 2017 and in 2020. He served as special advisor.
I thought that was, I don't know, was it on, I think it was At Issue? Or maybe Andrew Coyne or someone suggested that one thing the Liberals could do is just shrink that puppy down. Just cleave some away. And but that would probably cause just as many problems. So, I don't know.
This time on, like,
But we
none
do
other.
have a whole bunch
How
of
difficult is it to pivot
ministers.
so quickly for any party, as we saw in August when BC United folded, and we saw the entire landscape of this election and the campaign change? How difficult is that for any party in this scenario, for the Conservatives, for the NDP? Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, for ourselves, I think.
What's the total
we knew what
number
we had
of
to
ministers
do.
there are
We had
now
to
in the
run
cabinet?
a campaign where we talked to the voters, and we talked to them about health care, we talked to them about housing, we talked to them about affordability. Those were things that mattered to them, and that's what we did. So we were very happy with our campaign. We thought we ran a good campaign. And David Eby was an amazing candidate going out there and connecting with the voters. We knew with the Conservatives, we didn't really know what they were. Like they just started, and we're surprised when the other party just folded. The official opposition just folded.
37
So that was
plus?
odd.
Good
But we went into the
God.
campaign knowing we had to talk to the voters about the issues they cared about, and we felt we did that.
One last
knew it was
question
a
quickly.
lot,
Some of
but
these
that's
races are
so
so close. Some ridings are in single
That's such a
digits.
big
What does
cabinet.
that tell you?
It tells me that the voters out there had a tough time making decisions. And right now, a lot of people out there are hurting. We came out of the pandemic, and when we came out of the pandemic, inflation came in. Services were not as good as they were before for various reasons, and the voters are looking around and saying they want some hope. We tried to do that by talking about the issues that were relevant, again, about housing, affordability, and health care. So, and the voters are always right, so we have some more work to do.
Okay, Bob Dewar, a former BC NDP campaign director. He served as special advisor this time around. He led the party to 2 victories in 2017 and 2020. They are obviously hoping to clinch another victory again tonight. We will see if that happens pretty soon. Back to you guys.
Okay, Sarah, thanks very much.
Master of coin.
Let's take a look again as the NDP are holding on to 46
Yeah,
right
Privy
now.
Council should be called the
45,
small
Greens with
council.
2. Let's look at where
honest.
they're picking up seats and losing seats. Of course, the
Mulroney
Conservatives
had
come into
40?
this picking up
Good
a lot of
Lord.
seats.
Oh, yeah.
But as you've said a little while ago, the story is what have the NDP lost?
Yeah, and they're right now they're not losing enough to actually not form government potentially, but losing 9 seats. David Eby, and when he talks tonight, I think he's going to have to strike a very humble tone. This is a big loss for the NDP. They're not there yet in terms of forming a comfortable government. You see the popular vote there is very narrow for the NDP over the Conservatives, but it has not translated into enough seats yet. As we say, there's now 4 seats that have very slim margins. The NDP, again, just the narrowest of leads in a couple of ridings, and the Conservatives with the narrowest of leads in a couple of ridings. So it remains a very tight race.
A lot of blue south of the Fraser over on the map. Let's check in with Richard for his take on this.
Yeah, we'll get to those losses in a minute. I want
So
to
a lot
show
of it
some
is just
places
kind of
where
win,
Orange is
like keep
held
like
on though, and
caucus
this
on
is going
side.
to be one of the big conversation pieces. If Sunita Deer can hold on to the seat, a pickup in Vancouver Langara, there will be a lot of internal questions about why did we keep Brian Bruget. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Jamie Stein was a star candidate for United. He has strength in the Jewish community. Many people from the Jewish community live in Vancouver Langara. Brian Bruget had made some controversial comments in his past, and this seems to have come back potentially to haunt them again. Very close, 315 votes, 14-16. Another place where we are focused in, where the NDP is hoping to hold on to, is in part John Horgan's part of John Horgan's old riding, the soup part of it. The other part of that riding was a green riding, part of Cowichan Valley.
Are these the ones that they've called, I guess, that they're going
44
through?
votes. And I'll show you what's happened. If you're listening on CKW, I'll describe this for you. The Conservatives had a significant lead, and Lejeunesse just jumped into the lead with a little bit more than 90% of the polls reporting there. So those polls are
I get
really
paid
important
the
for
big
the
bucks.
NDP,
For
and
sure.
so would be this one. But
That's
again,
why I'm
you've mentioned
streaming
it
on a
again
Saturday
and again
night.
tonight, how close Surrey City Centre is. Amna Shah's lead's a little bit bigger now, 34 votes. It is the closest I have almost ever seen one of these lines. I've done a number of these election shows. I've never seen a line quite like this. In essence, tied for the entirety of the night. As every poll comes in, it starts indicating that. And then you talked about the Conservative gains. You guys eloquently mentioned many of those into the Fraser Valley. It goes further than that, though, right? It goes into Surrey and works their way into some of these ridings. And I want to focus in on somewhere incumbents could fall here. Ginny Sims losing by 355 votes to Brian Tepper in Surrey Panorama. We'll focus on this riding. Surrey North, Roshna Singh, an incumbent, was the Minister of Education, losing by 1,200 votes with 16 of 18 polls reporting
In
there.
access, yeah.
Surrey Serpentine.
I'd rather, can I
Linda
get
Hepler
locked
leads by
out
just
a little bit and
467
paid a
votes.
little bit
I want to
more?
show you the trend line on this because it has remained relatively
I'll
consistent.
trade a little bit of my access away
and
for
the,
some more money.
NDP with
The open
Baltej
bars are
Dillon
pretty
unable
nice.
to make those gains.
But
This is
it does
another
not-
one that could be an
open
incumbent
bars don't pay
losing.
my
Gary
rent.
Begg trailing by just 106 votes to Hanvir Radhana. 17 out of 19 polls reporting. And the last one, and this has been, again, I've mentioned this riding, I think, more than anything else. I've probably mentioned the name of this riding more than I've mentioned the names of my kids over the last 28 days. Surrey Cloverdale, Eleanor Sturko leading by 539
that
votes
one's a
here.
little sad,
This
man.
was one we knew was going to be close, and it remains close. And those are some of the seats the Conservatives are
The
picking
foreign
up,
mission
including some of
confectionery.
these
I'm
in
still
Richmond,
thinking
Richmond
about
Centre,
the
Richmond Steveston,
hip of beef.
and that's why we see this so close here.
Well, we'll
That
give a
shit was
shout
so
out to
good.
Bailey and Eli.
Yeah, you could say Bailey and Eli. Bailey and Eli, Bailey and Eli, Bailey and Eli. I've caught up now.
All right.
Thanks so much, Richard.
All right. The issues of this election were, of course, healthcare, affordability, and housing. And we put together our issues panel to talk about those big points that were driving voters to the polls, and perhaps thinking change, because you see the Conservatives with 45
I have a
ridings
friend
where
who's
they're
a
leading or
provincial
elected.
judge, and every time I
It's a
talk
bit
to
of
her, I
a
make sure to
teeter-totter
remind her
right
that
now,
she makes 2
and
times as
you know,
much.
talking about the big issues, we were talking about public safety last time around. Right now, we
Oh,
want to
that
dive
is an
a little bit
interesting
further
question,
into housing
Fenris
and
Bueller.
affordability. Health Salem, we heard
Or
time
what
and
will
time
it say
again this was
tomorrow
going to be
will be
a
even
bread
more
and
interesting.
butter election. Do these results tell you that that's what we're seeing?
Cost of living was always a #1 issue in a lot of the issue polls that we saw coming into this election and during it. And tied to that was also healthcare, but I think also housing. I think what's interesting about the results in terms of the policy and the platforms is, I think at the end of the day, whoever forms government, I think pro-housing development probably won, because you had commitments, or you had the NDP running off their record of the pro-density, transit-oriented development, density around transit stations, and then you had eventually the Conservatives coming out and saying, we're largely going to keep that intact. We're going to change some of the things around the smaller scale density of the 4 units per lot kind of stuff. But there's a lot of pro-housing policies that are going to win no matter who forms government, it sounds like. But I think that what was interesting is that you had the NDP having to run off of their record of policy change with only really doing it in the last year. So you're not seeing the types of impacts hitting the electorate yet, where typically in jurisdictions like in New Zealand or in some cities like in Minnesota, where they brought in a lot of density, you see rents and housing prices sort of stagnate, and income's allowed to catch up over time. But you didn't have enough runway to really get there.
Yeah, not quite enough time.
Oh my God, it's
and,
already
Brad, I wanted
1
to
a.m.
ask your perspective a little
Well,
bit, because we
1
heard a
a.m.,
lot from municipal governments that the density zoning rules that were put in by the province were just not attainable. Could you just provide a little perspective from POCO?
Yeah, it's interesting. The NDP very much went all in on the idea of housing density. And in doing so, they passed some legislation that took decades and decades of community planning and threw it out the window. Now, you can argue about whether there's merit there in some respects, but it really upended things, and it brought them into a lot of conflict with mayors and city councillors across the province. We saw public hearings removed. We saw density guaranteed around transit stations. And probably most controversially, we saw this idea that on every single family lot, there is a legal right to a minimum of a fourplex. Now, Rusta and the Conservatives said they were going to get rid of all the NDP's housing legislation, that they would repeal it. And so they really went in on this density. It brought them into conflict with a lot of mayors and councillors. It's interesting to see some of the results in south of the Fraser, where this is a real big issue, and you see what's happened there. You know, the one thing that I think is worth pointing out that they didn't talk about is that 180,000 new people came to this province in a single year. It's historic and unprecedented. And you can't outbuild that.
Well,
the
polls close at night, so they give everyone the whole day to vote.
There's a whole wider spectrum.
It's why are they doing it on a Saturday? Is the question
a lot of
we should all be asking.
the pushback for the lack of density.
I guess it does make it easier for people to vote,
for the
but goddamn.
schools, the hospitals, for all those people moving in. And I think a lot of the conversation around housing has been about providing supports, but not enough about how you're going to bring down those costs on housing. If we look at what the federal government's doing, the provincial government, municipal government spending millions of dollars on what's going to happen on housing. But if you look at the data, Central 1 between January 2023 to 2024, new housing starts are down. So when the public doesn't see new housing come up, to Hill-Salem's point, they're not going to believe the numbers that we can put up. And we know the NDP hasn't hit the numbers that they promised to hit moving forward. But I think it's a big thing. That's where 3 levels of government need to come together. And I think Bill 44 was a classic example of government wanting to do something, but not talking to municipalities.
Sorry.
And local neighborhoods not
just
wanting
reading
because you can't
BC NDP takes.
They didn't consult on it, and they wouldn't talk to us after about it.
Interesting. And I wanted to talk about a point that you made, Dr. Wolak, about, housing affects so much, and it affects healthcare incredibly. Give us your perspective as a family physician, why this housing
but I also am
problem that we're
quite
seeing
tired.
right now is so important when it comes to also fixing healthcare.
Seeing posts about exit polls reporting people were tired of Trudeau and voted for change.
Our patients. I mean, every physician can talk about an unhoused patient and their multitude of medical concerns, but when you're looking at fixing healthcare, they can attract all
there
the
was
best and the brightest
what was it, the
healthcare
Trudeau
workers
Horgan
to the
voters
province.
in
But
like
if
20
these
when was
healthcare
their
workers come here
the
and they can't
last
afford
NDP
to
provincial
stay
election?
Here, they can't afford to live the life that they want to
Thank
lead.
you, Camilla.
And they can't afford to raise their children here.
We don't
people
have
are
milk
going
cartons,
to leave.
though.
And we
Our milk
already
comes
know
in a
that
bag.
40% of doctors in the next 5 years are going to be retiring or cutting their hours down. We can't afford to lose more people, and therefore that needs to be targeted in any solution that's looking at solving the healthcare crisis.
All right. It is still early. It has not been called. We are still standing by, but we're going to throw it back to Chris and Sophie with hopefully some more results. Can we find out where this is going?
Well,
we're
working on it. We're working on it. Well, we'll show you some of the battlegrounds in Metro, Vancouver.
It remains very tight in what is usually a close race out there in Maple Ridge East, formerly Maple Ridge Mission, but so far the Conservatives have the lead with Lawrence Mock over the incumbent Bob Deeth. And Richmond Centre, Henry Yao won by the narrowest of margins back in 2020. This is not necessarily a surprise. This was the weakest of the NDP seats in Richmond, and Han Chan now the leader there.
And these are seats that the Conservatives would be picking up. These are seats that are helping them make this such a close race. This one, Richmond-Queensborough, our Jazz Johal, very familiar with this one. The Conservatives winning this one. Aman Singh was in tight races the last two elections and finally defeated.
And this remains a tight race in Coquitlam-Burke Mountain. Again, just a 274 lead there for Jody Wickens, who actually won the ride-in in a by-election a number of years ago, but that is still very close out there as well. And North Van Seymour, bit of a landmark win here. This is a repeat win for Susie Chant for the NDP, winning for the first time in 2020. This may be a signal that North Van Seymour has changed over the years and now favors the NDP.
And let's check in with Richard Zussman for how that's playing out on the map.
I'll definitely get my air tag ready.
Sonia was the one that was supposed to bring the crystal ball to this thing, right? So we could tell what was going to happen, but I guess she forgot it, so we're just going to have to wait till the results come in. Wanda Fuka-Malahad is one of those places we're still waiting. 46 votes.
You can get jugs of milk
leads here, and I want to show you those two
just the majority of our milk
just to give them
a
bit of focus. Rob Botterill leading by 1,216 votes over Sarah Riddell, the New Democrat in Saanich North and the Islands, and Jeremy Valeriot leading by 609 votes in West Vancouver.
Makes it easier for transport.
Very good for the Greens in those two guys.
Sorry. I've been coughing, so I have a puffer. Okay.
I'm sorry, Sophie, that's on me.
She needs to be reminded to take it, though, is the only problem.
Yes. Okay, I won't do it on air.
That's fine.
Yes. So the Greens, we saw Sonia Furstenau speaking just a little while ago. She's not going back to the legislature, but two new faces will be. Let's check in with Green Party headquarters. That's where Kylie Stanton is tonight.
Yeah, Sophie, some mixed emotions here tonight. The good news, 2 seats in the legislature for the BC Greens, which means they will maintain that official party status with
you get like a little
in West Vancouver, Sea to Sky, and Rob Botterill in Saanich Islands and the North. But the bad news, BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau lost her seat in Victoria Beacon Hill to
you get something like this.
Incumbent Grace Lore. You saw her a little while ago.
And then the bag just goes in there, and then you just cut a little hole in the corner.
A lot of emotion, also a lot of unknowns. So for that, I want to bring in Adam Olsen, 2-time Green Party MLA here on the island. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Now,
like
what does this mean for the Green Party leadership going forward? Will Sonia maybe consider seeking a seat elsewhere?
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate.
It's always
tonight.
fun explaining how bagged milk works
still
to
a lot
Americans.
Of to be determined. The election's very, very close, as Sonia said.
That's just going to happen every once in a while.
To the BC Green Party and the movement.
The worst is when you put it in the bag, and then you go to pour it, and it's like a little top-heavy on this
we're going
part
to
of the bot,
keep an eye on what's
above
keep an
the
eye, make
jug,
sure that the
so
two
it just
ridings
like
that are projected
collapses in like all of the milk.
And then take it
just
day by day over the coming days.
That's that
now,
one.
This is very deja vu. Back to 2017. In terms of balance of power, will the Greens be looking to strike a deal going forward?
I think it's still early days. We have to have a conversation with
most of the time.
those
If you drop
two
a
new
milk
Greens.
bag, it'll just bounce.
Once they're declared victorious, then they will have the job of working alongside Sonia, the leader of the BC Greens.
Yes, this is true.
To determine a path forward, and those conversations will start. I think one of the things that British Columbians should rest somewhat easy is that we've experienced this before. We have very much seen what it's like to be working with colleagues across the way from us. And the BC Greens have always been committed to a functional government. And so we'll be working towards that, and we'll see how that looks at the end of the night.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam. Appreciate you joining us. And we will be hearing from the new candidates that have been elected tonight shortly. And celebration is still underway for the wins here tonight. Back to you guys.
Well, they made breakthroughs. Thank you very much, Kylie and Adam Olsen, off the island now with
West Vancouver, see this guy. But still, if you're the Green Party, you know, 2 seats and you lose your leader, not a good night. I'm sorry. Even though they're technically, if it holds here, they will have the balance of power at the legislature. So they will have a disproportionate amount of power and influence. Don't know how long, we've talked about this before, how long this type of arrangement, if it holds, actually lasts. Hard to see it lasting a full 4-year mandate. But the Conservative vote, the popular vote, is less than 10%. It's been dropping in the last few elections, and they really haven't gone to a detailed look here. But you know, they finished with approaching 30% of the vote in 2020 in a number of ridings. It doesn't look like they finished that strong in the places. They finished much stronger in 2020 and 2017. So again, not a good night for the Greens, but it might turn out being a better night when you look at the fact that they hold the balance of power as it stands now.
Definitely need a funnel to like get it into like a water balloon or something.
That is so true. Conservatives have done well in some of the ridings they needed to. Surrey Serpentine River is one of them. Linda Hepner predicted elected there, and standing by with Jordan at Conservative headquarters. Jordan?
Yeah, Chris, Linda Hepner, of course, former mayor of Surrey, and now Global BC has declared her elected, so heading to Victoria. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm excited.
What was the #1 issue you heard at the doorstep?
Mostly affordability. And after that,
We might give this
chaos,
another, like,
mental
half an hour
health,
more.
addiction on the streets.
And then we can
I'm
wake up and
curious,
see what happens.
did the policing issue in Surrey ever come up on the doorstep?
You know what? Not once.
You're kidding.
Not
The
once.
disheveled Elvis
Which was,
look?
as a
Did
matter of
Elvis
fact,
ever
a
have a
big
mustache?
surprise to me. Didn't come up once.
Now, let's talk about the Brent Chapman comments. Do you figure, did that hurt you at all? I mean, you've narrowly won, but tell me about that.
You know, they were really bad comments, and I didn't hear it at the doorsteps. And I think that leaving it in the hands of the electorate was probably the only thing you could say at that point in time.
When you do get to Victoria, what's your first order of business?
Well, let's just watch the rest of the night and see if we get to govern
Welcome back.
or we get to critique government. Either way, I intend on really representing the riding and the people of Surrey.
Do you feel like there was enough attention on Surrey in this election? I mean, the leaders made a lot of stops there, but did it get the coverage you wanted?
I think it got lots of coverage. I think for the first time, it got recognized as, hey, we're 10 seats out of 90. We're 10% of the electorate. And that made a big difference. I think a lot of focus was given to Surrey, rightly so, in my opinion.
Linda Hepner, thank you so much for your time. And again, congratulations. All right, back to the desk.
All right, Jordan, thanks very much. And former Mayor Linda Hepner as well.
She didn't seem very happy about Brent Chapman's
No,
comments.
well, I don't blame her, but it appears that Brent Chapman, you know, the ridings the NDP thought was going to have an impact was 3 ridings where there's a large Muslim community. That's in the Surrey Panorama, Surrey Cloverdale, and Surrey Serpentine. And right now, we haven't declared everyone elected, but Eleanor Sturkle has a healthy lead in Surrey Cloverdale, and Linda Hepner has been declared the winner in Surrey Serpentine, and Ginny Sims appears to have lost, or appears to be losing in Surrey Panorama. So it doesn't seem to have the impact, and frankly, Brent Chapman, I don't know if we've declared him elected yet, but he has a very big lead in Surrey South.
All right, well, still too close to call. 46 for the NDP, 45 for the Conservatives, 2 for the Greens.
We'll be right back with more on Decision BC. Stick around.
All right. Flipping over to CBC. Can never have dead air.
With 30 votes back and forth between Loyal
God
Holdred with
damn.
the NDP
Why is this so
and
close?
Christina Lowen with the Conservatives. depending on how you do the math, that could be the difference between an NDP majority and an NDP minority. So very tight there. The other interesting race in Vernon,
37-32
NDP
like for elected seats.
She's the incumbent with the NDP.
9 leading for NDP, 13 for Conservative. That's CBC's standings.
Both former BC United candidates both decided to run. Michael Humer in Kelowna Centre and Kevin Acton, popular mayor
Global
in
has 46-45-2, 34 elected, 30 elected for Conservatives, 34 NDP, 12 leading NDP, 15 NDP, or Conservative leading.
Very solidly Conservative.
Very interesting.
A couple of NDP ridings in the Kootenays that have hung on. No surprise there.
I think it's the second
NDP
one.
Ridings, but
Tool using
lots
now.
of blue around,
oh, both. Yes, you're right.
Not only the Okanagan, but the East Kootenay as well. Very happy people here tonight.
Have a good night, Camilla. Thanks for hanging out. We probably won't be on for much longer, but appreciate having you.
Ridings to watch this evening, I should say. We want to zero in on one NDP candidate in particular. He is a familiar name to many. Nathan Cullen. Let's check in on riding results in Bulkley Valley, Stikine, where Nathan Cullen is trailing, and I'd say significantly so at this point. Sharon Hartwell with the Conservatives leading by 939 votes. Nathan Cullen, of course, former MP with the NDP, becoming an MLA with the provincial NDP afterwards. But this is an interesting result right now. I'd love to get reaction from Ginger Gosnell-Myers. Ginger, what do you make of this?
This is a really surprising result because that riding has seen majority of NDP support over the years. Nathan Cullen has been quite popular with the NDP, all of his time as an MP, and then his switch over to provincial politics. He was seen as a potential leader of the provincial NDP at one time, and I don't think that
it's not gonna be all settled cleanly
this riding
tonight for sure.
A huge loss for the BC NDP. Of course, we've seen a lot of racism in that riding. We've seen some vandalism of signs in that riding. It's gotten quite ugly. It's been really disappointing to see that in this election. And for Nathan Cullen, I think this is something that folks are going to be quite upset over.
Oh, I didn't even know the Conservatives made a video out of the response to my question.
And therefore, it's hard to draw conclusions until every vote is counted, it seems. But what do you make of the night so far for David Eby?
Well, I think we can draw some early conclusions about what kind of night it's been for the NDP and David Eby. It has not been a good night. Now, like we've been saying since the beginning of the evening, it was going to be tight. It was tight. And that level of dissatisfaction that people were feeling and seeing in terms of...
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman!
Province. It's like the
I really like that, like
there,
just the way it cuts there is very funny as well.
There may have been some skepticism or a bit of like, yeah, but are people really that angry? I think they've sent a pretty clear message tonight that in many cases they are that angry. They were that angry. An incumbent like Nathan Cullen going down to the Conservatives tonight is a big signal. The fact that, as you say, they're on a knife's edge, it is a pretty big signal and a repudiation of a lot of the things.
Oh, and Andy Fillmore's been elected
in terms of
Mayor of Halifax.
The Eby government perhaps went maybe too far, too fast on a lot of issues for British Columbians. While
Former
maybe
Liberal
losing
MP.
sight of the bread and butter stuff, cost of living, housing, and so importantly, healthcare. So those are some big black eyes. I think on the other side of it for the Conservatives, the candidate eruptions, the controversial comments, the sometimes racist, really not acceptable comments from some candidates that Rustad said that he would stand by, that he would not ditch. Again, I think the chattering classes and the political analysts and the pundits.
Yeah, he held on, and like it was looking like the Conservatives were gonna rush in and take it. So
to the cost of their vote when making up their minds.
Shashi, thank you. Mo, one of the visuals we keep seeing tonight is the map of BC, and you can just see the fracture in the party geographically speaking. I wonder how politically divided you think BC is right now.
Well, it's interesting to see the BC NDP doing not as well as expected in Surrey and Richmond in particular, and that's basically where they're losing this election. I know it's still tight, but in terms of where they underperformed, you can look at those two regions specifically. If you had given the BC NDP the opportunity to form the perfect political opponent in a laboratory 6 months ago, they would have given you a party very similar to the BC Conservatives. They would have given you a leader that perhaps is not that charismatic, perhaps has some climate change denialism, some vaccine skepticism, has pandered to conspiracy theorists. Maybe their front line would be not that well-known BC Liberal MLAs, and then the rest of the party would be rounded out by basically internet trolls. On top of that, the BC Conservatives did not have a get-out-the-vote strategy. They didn't really have voter ID systems. I mean, this was a party that really did not have the same amount of resources as the BC NDP, and the fact that it's this close is very much a repudiation of David Eby and the BC NDP.
Our political watchers panel, always great to hear from you. We'll continue to hear from all three of you throughout the evening. Gloria.
Let's head to Vancouver Island. We're taking you to Nanaimo now, where George Anderson has been projected elected in Nanaimo, Landsville. A good evening to you. And how are you feeling about this close race tonight?
Well, I can tell you that I'm focused on Nanaimo, Landsville, and I feel extremely honored to be the first MLA for Nanaimo, Landsville, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that the individuals in our community are represented well.
And what went right with your community? What were the messages that landed with voters in your view?
Well, I would say that I was born and raised in this community. I was a city councillor from 2011 to 2014. I've volunteered significantly in this community, and what people were hearing and saying at the doorsteps is that they wanted a government that's focused on healthcare, that's focused on affordable housing, and making sure that we're doing everything that we can for everyday British Columbians. And that's what I will do as the MLA for Nanaimo, Landsville.
The first MLA for Nanaimo, Landsville. George Anderson, thank you for your time tonight.
Yes.
George Anderson,
thank you.
Projected.
All right, I'm absolutely fading. We'll give it about
so we haven't seen much
15
change in
minutes.
The numbers right now. The NDP still leading and elected in 46 ridings.
It was like I haven't said anything in like 2 minutes.
But we can tell you the races
not providing anything of
close.
value anymore.
Keep our eye on those races that could flip all these numbers on their head. Let's go back now to Stephen Quinn and our political insiders.
Mo Sahota just a few minutes ago.
But I know as soon as I turn it off, there'll be something major will happen.
It looks like
just my luck.
polls have yet to report. Tell us what you noticed exactly.
Yeah, no, it seems in every one, it's 20 out of 22 polls reporting, and yeah,
I've been keeping track, almost every poll.
Yeah, and so as a result of that, until those last two sets of polls are counted in at least 5 seats that are still very much at play, we really won't know what the outcome tonight is in terms of who forms government for the majority, or if there's just going to be a minority at the 46-45-2 level.
And there doesn't seem to be much difference between whether in the lower mainland or in urban areas.
No, it's right across. So I don't know if it's a
Richmond Centre. I'm looking at. There's 2 polls outstanding in just about every riding right now. We've got 2 polls outstanding, and this is the new automatic tabulation system that's being used. It's supposed to speed things up. We're told, according to Elections BC, I just went onto their website, and they say that 98% of all votes will be counted, or as many as 98% will be counted on election night. Does that mean we're going to be here all night waiting for the last 2%?
I certainly hope
yes.
Snacks.
Yeah.
I mean,
not you too.
But with things this close, that last 2% could make a big difference.
Not this Mo, and not Pete Mo, the other Mo. And a rather scathing assessment of the BC Conservative Party a moment ago.
Yeah, Mo, that was not, I think it was a bit dramatic and over the top. I think what we're learning tonight is that there are a lot of people in this province that believe in the Conservative Party. They're potentially our next government. They believe in John Rustad and a lot of the candidates. It's easy to say, they have all of these issues. What really it boils down to is these are small business owners. These are young parents. I mean, we saw Gavin Dew get elected in Kelowna. He's the father of young children who really wants to see childcare propelled forward in this province. Under the BC Liberals, we got so much slack for having older candidates. And now we're seeing a slate of younger candidates across the province, and to degrade them to the diatribe that Mo Amir just said, I think it's not fair. I really think
it is. We're we're
look
the
at
strangest
some
country.
of the benefits that we have in those candidates across the
But
province.
Yes, you can
someone like Brett Chapman won tonight, and I think that's a real problem.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
so you can agree with me and the other Mo on that front. I mean, you have
Yes.
someone
And
who
Pete
made,
Mo, I'm just going to say.
And Pete Mo.
And Pete as well.
It's
And
true,
Pete, yeah.
but I just want to, the dramatization of the Conservatives as bad and everybody being under that same banner, I think we need to also look at some of the benefits that the Conservatives are offering British Columbians that obviously, when we see these results, British Columbians are respectful of and responding to.
We all look forward to the 5% annual growth, I am sure, which is what we're told we're going to get.
Yeah, Mo's really funny.
Hey, have we seen Mr. Rustad just completely overpromise? I mean, how is he going to live up to suggesting that we can have a 5% annual growth rate in this province, for instance?
John Rustad laid out his plan for the province. Voters
3 days before the vote.
He laid it out. Voters are responding to it. I mean, I'm not the one to choose the premier. I wish I was.
I understand.
But British Columbians, 5 million British Columbians, have the opportunity to say, John Rustad, we believe or we don't believe in your platform. And obviously, we're seeing that they are coming out in droves and saying, we want change. The NDP have failed us. We want to see the plan that John Rustad has put forward.
Let's hear from Pete for a second.
I think that it was a change vote rather than a we really like what they're laying out. I think it wasn't costed. It was a pretty vague plan, and I think overpromised all sorts of things, and I don't think people were really looking at the plan. I think there's a lot of young people under 30 who have never lived with a Conservative government. But they have been under a Pierre Trudeau and a provincial NDP government, and things aren't better for them. So they're looking like, that hasn't been good. How can we change things? How can we get life better? And forget about things like COVID and inflation and interest rates and all the other pressures that we've had on society that we've been struggling with and have made life arguably worse. People are just looking for something better, and I think that's what
We've talked about the messaging of the Conservative campaign tonight, and I think
that's the thing is a lot of change elections in Canada are generally against the status quo rather than for a change to something.
And John Rustad put that to voters, and that's what we're
that
seeing
makes
tonight.
sense. My only suggestion is that he has a lot to live up to.
and he won't be able to live up to it. Look, what's happening out there right now, there's a residual unease. There's high interest rates, there's high inflation, and people are having trouble going from month to month, from paycheck to paycheck. And so they're looking for solutions. And they're very divided on what those solutions ought to be. Look, a lot of people tonight voted NDP. They voted NDP because they think we're going to be better at looking after health care, better at dealing with issues of affordability, and better at dealing with issues of housing. And so it's a divided province, historically a highly polarized one, and that these results tonight reflect simply that. I don't think that it's a vote in favor of Mr. Rustad, and I think most people would rather prefer that Mr. Eby be the Premier of the province, and he's one, possibly 2 seats short of that.
We shall see shortly, we hope. Thank you, all three of you, once again. Back to the desk.
Stephen, thank you very much. Well, if tonight wasn't dramatic enough,
add a little more drama.
Just gotten more dramatic. We're getting information right now from Elections BC.
This is why I didn't.
In terms of the numbers not coming in, this is why. Elections BC is setting a safety issue in the polls that haven't finished reporting right now, saying that the final poll in many of these districts won't be released just yet until they can recount the full votes, given how close this race is. Once again, Elections BC is setting a safety issue because according to the electronic tabulators, which is once again the first time we're using these in a BC provincial election, once that final poll is reported, that polling station closes down, which we are understanding BC Elections does not want to do just yet. So they want to recount until they release the final poll. It just so happens, Gloria, of course, that final poll could determine who forms government.
In close races like this, it's interesting because we did hear, prior to the polls closing tonight from Andrew Watson of Elections BC that considering we've got this electronic voting system, it could be all called within an hour. We saw the results come in very, very quickly initially, but again, we have not seen those numbers change on the bottom of our screen for quite some time now. And that
Yeah,
I was say
I'm
that
sure everyone's
explains
going to
it.
be
It's
very
still
normal about that.
confusing. We have put out a request to Elections BC for more clarification on exactly what is going on, but we've got a lot of outstanding close races, Jason.
Exactly. And as you say, Gloria, CBC has put a request into Elections BC to get clarification on the situation. But as I say, the latest information we have, the final poll in many of these ridings not being released just yet, citing safety issues, wanting to recount to make sure they have those numbers correctly. And have a look. This is why it matters. Too close to call. Wanda Fuka-Malahat, where the NDP candidate is currently leading the Conservatives by 34 votes. Surrey City Centre just as close. The NDP candidate there leading the Conservative by 41 votes.
Surrey, Guildford, Kelowna Centre, Courtney Comox, Coquitlam, Burke Mountain, all very, very close matches. Let's go back to Dan and Michelle for more results.
Wow, look at how tight and how close those ridings are that are
Election
too close to call
safety.
right now. Let's take you back up to the northern interior where there's a lot of blue. The Conservatives' vote share right now is at 61%, and the NDP have a vote share of 27.3%. And how about the seat change? Well, the Conservatives picking up 9. They're leading in 9, and the NDP -1 right now when it comes to the ridings there in the northern interior. In fact, let's look at some of those specific ridings. In Bulkley Valley, Stikine, the Conservative candidate, the former mayor of Telkwa, Sharon Hartwell, is leading by 1,301 votes over the NDP incumbent, Nathan Cullen. So that result there, I'm sure NDP is really on their edge of their seats for that one. And in the Caribou-Chilcotin, the Conservative candidate, Lorne Dirksen, is projected elected there. He was one of the early BC United MLAs to jump ship over to the BC Conservatives. Lorne Dirksen is projected elected in Caribou-Chilcotin. And of course, let's revisit John Rustad, leader of the BC Conservatives, is projected elected in Nechako Lakes. And one more here, North Coast, Haida Gwaii. Tamara Davidson, the NDP candidate, is projected elected there for the NDP.
We have several more to go through, so we'll get you caught up as we wait for those updates from Elections BC. Peace River North, Jordan Keeley projected elected over the incumbent.
Or something that'll get me steady through things like a budget, through a budget and everything else, to the other side of a federal election. That's what I want, because that's a very different context for the NDP. If we do have a federal election and it flips to a Pierre Poilievre government, they're probably in a much more favorable context for them to get reelected, and a very different dynamic for what is now the official opposition, if this is what forms, in the Conservatives.
I want to go back to you, Jeff, just for a moment. I was speaking to a New Democrat yesterday, and they weren't completely happy with the way David Eby has run the party and government. And one of the things they said to me was David Eby needs to step back a little bit. He has to play chairman, not CEO, which means putting his fingers into every project, everything coming out of the Premier's office, not delegating like your old boss, John Horgan, used to do. Do you think that's part of the reason why the NDP are in this predicament at this point? I mean, it's always going to be a close race, I get that. But the complaint has always been, this guy's got his fingers in everything. He's got to stop playing CEO. He's got to step back and start playing chairman.
Well, I think that we saw the David Eby's approval ratings continue to be ahead of John Rostad's and pretty good right through to the latest polls. So there was a high degree of public sympathy for his style of governing and his approach. But I think he will, as Bob Doer was saying just a few minutes ago on the broadcast, have to step back and reflect with the whole team about how they do business differently to gain more support from British Columbians going forward than they did in the past. And that could be part of the discussion.
Well, lots to talk about, Sophie and Chris. Back to you guys, and we'll try to go through drill through all the numbers that we're seeing as well. I'll get back to you very soon.
Yeah, sounds very good, Jazz. Thank you for that. And one thing that was consistent across the panel is everybody believes it's going to be difficult to get a deal or any kind of arrangement.
Unless the Conservatives can flip Wanda Fuka, which is 34 votes for the NDP right now, and unless they can flip
29 votes,
29, Surrey Central, which is 42, unless you've got a different number. No. If they can take those two back from the NDP, they could have 47 seats. And but again, Mike McDonald raised a good point. Will it be CASA, confidence and supply agreement, or will it be vote by vote? If this is what we get to, where the Greens,
or if the Green Party only has 2 seats and no leader, why don't they just join
the Greens? But
a party?
Vote by vote basis, and what will they extract from the NDP if we indeed have this situation. So here we see the popular vote. Again, the NDP with a slight edge here over the Conservatives, but it's not translating into a significant edge in seats. But our pollsters were right. They said it was going to be a dead.
All right, I'm sorry, guys. I'm exhausted. I have to call it. I'm not adding anything of value. Yes, no, that the one side with that making that suggestion, yeah, just go to bed. You're drunk, Stuart. That's not gonna happen. All right. Oh, Igloo's streaming. We'll raid Igloo.
Can see that though. I mean, it's very much like they've got a lot of logging industries in there. There's the tourism thing that keeps them afloat. Artistry, bigly. There's a lot of artistry in the Kootenays.
Well, it's
No, wrong one.
there's a ton of. I think there are a lot of people here.
All right,
who
ladies and
learned
gentlemen.
from the mistakes of former.
Let's get this raid going.
Liberal governments, and union jobs.
Is it underscore BC?
But
Yes, union
it's
jobs,
it's
yeah.
all still based in
Mills?
resource
Look
extraction.
at all
Though.
the
That's
mills. Like there's a ton of mills.
Everyone
in there,
get
right?
in there.
Yeah.
No. What did I just do?
Look at this one again, because I'm curious the split. So 50, 30.
Oh, there we go. Just has to start again.
30, 38.
4,
That's such an
3,
interesting split.
2, 1, and we are raiding.
Would not expect.
Bye-bye now.
I wouldn't expect in the interior that they can get so many.
And to you
green
two,
votes.
I say good night.